Hello and welcome back to Racing on Zwift. This is week 2 of season 3 of the Zwift Racing League. And tonight, for the first time this season, it's the turn of the points race. I'm Matt Stevens. I'll be your host throughout the season. And, well, I certainly will not be alone because alongside me in the virtual world is Hannah Walker. Great to have you alongside us, Hannah.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be back with you and Dave, and looking forward to this one, the first points race of season 3. Looking forward as well to see how teams have changed up their tactics with the more points on offer in both the intermediate sprints and on the finish line. More later on that format, though, but I think it can change things up a little bit, and I think it's going to make things very exciting, and it won't be long until we can get a look at how it's going to play out.
Certainly agree with you there, Hannah. It's going to be thrilling tonight. It's a really, really fast course. But the ZRL wouldn't be the ZRL, would it? Without the legend that is Mr. Dave Tal. Dave, are you excited ahead of tonight? Of course, we've got our first glance at the new teams last week, but of course, completely different for the points race tonight.
Yeah, well, I am stoked. There's no doubt about it. I don't know if I'm as stoked as the sprinters are, though. They don't get many trips to the well here, and today it's not guaranteed. As Hannah said, it's going to be really interesting to see how disruptive these bonus sprints are. It's going to be like throwing a stick of dynamite into the middle of the peloton 3 times before we go to the finish line. It's going to be a crazy day of racing. Does it end up in a sprint? I think so, but who's going to be there and who's got the legs to contest in the men and the women's races is going to be the story.
Well, Dave, again, I love the analogies. I mean, it wouldn't be the ZRL without those Dave Towell analogies. Stick of dynamite in the peloton. Who knows? We'll know in a few moments' time. We'll have a look at what's in store for the riders in a little while. But let's cast our minds back to the opening round of season 3 of the ZRL, where we had a team time trial around the rolling green roads of France. Season 3 of the Zwift Racing League. It is a team time trial. The women are going to be riding on exactly the same course as the men. Team Hino are actually kicking things off. The runners-up last year, I Race Like a Girl.
Can they try and steal the dominance of Hino? Nice formation here from Sarah Sander Pro's closet.
We've only got 3 starters, in fact, for the KISS Racing team.
Hino racing with 9 minutes and 30 seconds. Canyon Esports only 6 seconds adrift.
Hino race team 5 strong. This is a superb performance by Canyon Esports. Team Beast Mode.
Ionian across the line, very, very close behind to KISS Racing Team.
TFC down to 3. Movistar have overtaken Vision E Racing. Wonderful ride there by Turbo as they cross the line. Heiner Racing, well, they have done it again. They have a 17-race unbroken run of winning. Canyon Esports, a very solid performance by them in second. I Race Like a Girl with a 32.35.
Starting season 3 with a bang.
Well, as expected, we had some scintillating racing last week to open up season 3 of the Zwift Racing League, and the results have been finalised. And if you head over to zwift.com/Zwift Racing League, you can find out all the results in detail, and you can actually have a look at what's in store for the riders over the course of the season as well. So all the information you need about everything ZRL is on zwift.com/Zwift Racing League. Now, Hannah, it's menu time, isn't it? Let's peruse, let's cast our eye over what's in store for the races tonight. We're in Watopia, familiar roads, but a course that's never been raced on before. So in that respect, pretty unique.
Very unique. Something new for the viewers, something new for the races. It was brought into Watopia back in December 2020, and this is Beach Island Loop. The riders will take on 3 laps of this course, totaling 38.5 kilometres. And we'll start in downtown Watopia, and we'll travel towards the volcano, around the back of the volcano, and head over that land bridge onto the dirt switchbacks, and we'll head towards the beautiful Italian villas, turn left at the top of there, and then we'll be into the first intermediate sprint, the first of 3. After the sprint, we'll turn right, and then we'll go onto the Bridge Island bypass and go over those rollers. Potentially a place for a rider wanting to go for a long one to the finish line. Who knows? We'll soon see. We'll head on to Ocean Boulevard and then head towards the fishing village. And once we've passed those docks and the dirt roads, we'll ascend down into the ocean tube. We'll pop back out, and that will finish 1 lap. Action-packed in just over 12 kilometres per lap, and not so much elevation, only 147 metres. So really, the sprinters will be licking their lips.
They certainly will, Hannah. I dropped in to Watopia earlier on, did a couple of laps at a far slower speed than, of course, the rods will be tackling it tonight. But the format remains the same. That profile doesn't really, it's not, it's far more flowing, isn't it? It's the elevation, as you said, really gentle. I think we're going to be in for a very, very intense, fast race tonight. But crucially, it's all about these points on offer. Explain a little bit about what's in store points-wise, because we do feel it's so significant that it could actually potentially change the tactics, and we may see far more aggressive racing. The race even might split up.
Well, we have 3 of those intermediate sprints, and each sprint, the top 10 riders across the line will be awarded. So 10 for first place, and then all the way down to 1 point. So it really is crucial for the teams to organise themselves and make sure they score highly before we get to the finish line, because the first 30 riders across the finish will be awarded as 50 for first place, 40 for second, 35 for third, 30 for fourth, 27 for fifth, and then from 6th all the way down to 30th, it's 1 point in descending. So really big points gaps there, and can certainly make the difference at the end of the race.
Yeah, and just one little bit of housekeeping. Only 3 power-ups available: Draft, Aero and Feather. And that leads us nicely into the 16 teams that will be participating in the women's racing tonight here in Watopia. The Beach Island Loop, there are the teams. Worth noting that there's 3 new teams. 1 wildcard team, that is the Movistar squad there. Many of you who watched The Road will be familiar with that kind of iconic looking kit. And then we have 2 other teams that were promoted from the community divisions last season. That's Beast Mode, powered by Rose, and Turbo as well, in the purple just on the right hand side. So who are your picks tonight then, Hannah, given the kind of park, or given the course that we've got?
Well, for me, looking at the team time trial from last week, Movistar E-Team, you've got to keep an eye out for them. I think as a newly formed team after their talent identification program, Beth McIver and Steph Clutterbuck really can pack a punch at the end of a race. And we've seen that from season 2. So I think for a newly formed team, the way they've been able to come together, it's very, very impressive. So I think tonight, watch out for them. Also, looking at 2024, one key thing to note, they have a new jersey. So they've gone from the green of the 2020 jersey, and now they're into the lighter blue with the navy jersey. Kristen Kulczynski, she's due a win surely soon. She's been there knocking it on the door, and also with the backup of Shayna Paulus of that team. They've also got 2 new recruits, Grace Wolfer and Paige Bolt as well, and Rachel Lieberman rounding out their squad. And then also my final team to watch for is Canyon Esports, also another team who week by week throughout season 1 and 2 of the ZRL have been improving dramatically. Mary Wilkinson, a very, very experienced Swifter, but looking forward in due course to see what Bexy Dew and Cecile Lejeune can do.
Yep, I cannot wait. They've got a very, very well-balanced team. Of course, Mary Wilkinson, no stranger to winning on Watopia. She's did a couple of seasons ago. But yeah, I'm fascinated. Before we got about 30 seconds now before they kind of ride out the pens. What sort of race are you expecting? Do you think teams will play it a little bit cautiously, or do you think teams are going to really get stuck in early doors?
I think they know they're in for a hard-fought race tonight. We've seen it in Season 2 when it was at Richmond. We had a relatively flat race where we thought it would end in a bunch sprint, and actually it was so intense, the peloton was quite shattered. So I think for those teams wanting to be in contention by the end, they really do have to have their wits about them in each of the intermediate sprints, Matt.
Great stuff. Well, we're straight into the racing now. They are underway. I think we've timed this almost to perfection there, Hannah. They're underway. They are still, of course, as you mentioned, start in downtown Watopia, heading towards the volcano. Round the back of the volcano, they actually go through the centre of the volcano, but no real elevation game, as you detailed earlier on. Across that land bridge, the dirt switchback, the Italian village. Then at around 6k, they hit that first intermediate sprint over Bridge Island. No time, unfortunately, to wave at the sea lions. But if you are watching and you're eagle-eyed, make sure you do give them a wave. And make sure as well that you fire up your Zwift Companion app, and make sure you give these riders some ride-ons as well, because that really does help with riders' morale. And remember, this is all about a community. You just watching at home can get involved, as well as enjoying the racing. Get behind your favourite riders and stick a ride-on in their pockets as we look at the pace early on. Unsurprisingly, Hannah, nice and fast, but a big blob, as we say. So riders just kind of bedded in really, really early on, and just getting a sense of what the pace is going to be like today.
Yeah, fast and furious start to the race. I hope everyone is very well warmed up and got all the lactate out the legs and is burning and ready to go, because this is a point in the race where if you're not warmed up, you're not prepared for the intense start, you could find yourself in difficulty out the back, before the real part of the racing has really gotten underway. And then we can see just how stretched out it is already. Jackie Godby up towards the front there. Just a slight gap to Nelson. Jackie Godby, a rider who has been so impressive throughout Zwift Racing. She took a victory atop of Libby Hill on the cobbles there in Richmond in Season 2 of the ZRL. And that was a real surprise win, wasn't it? It was very strung out on that climb. Sensational timing to perfection, and just came round. We thought it was wrapped up, and along comes Jackie Godby.
Yeah, I mean, when you look back at the kind of evolution of the Zwift Racing League, Hannah, that I think was one of my favourite races across both the men's and the women's races. And if you do head over to Zwift.com/Zwift Racing League, you can actually watch YouTube videos of the previous races as well as the races for this season. So it was a real kind of, to get a real nice sense of perspective. But yeah, if I were to recommend one race to watch, it would be Season 2, Richmond. Absolute classic. And there she is, right on cue there. Thank you, Mr. or Mrs. Producer, for firing that little picture up. Jackie Godby, picture in picture there. She's got a couple of bikes on the wall, the American flag, and 4.3 watts a kilo. And happy to set this tempo early on, which is pretty interesting, isn't it? She's really nailing her colours to the mask early on this ride.
She certainly is. She's got her teammate there as well, just patrolling matters. But I think Saris and the protocols, they've come into this with a real game plan of what they want to do. They want to start off fast, start off hard, try and shell a few of those riders, surprise a few teams from the get-go, really. And I think they certainly have done that. The speeds already, Matt, we've been averaging around 47, 48 kilometers per hour. So that just gives some indication how difficult this start is, and we can already see a couple of riders just tailed off at the back as we head through this volcano. And this is still been the work done by Jackie Godby. Imogen Cotter, the first look we can get at her in the new colours of the Movistar E-Team. So one of those riders who's been won a place from that talent identification programme.
Yeah, it really was a wonderful project, wasn't it? Started off at the beginning of the year. There was a series of races on Zwift that basically whittled it down to win the places on that particular squad. And we do hope that it sets down a little bit of a marker for other kind of World Tour teams to maybe do something different, something similar, should I say, in the future. But fair play to Movistar E-Team. They have teams across men's and women's. And if you just head over to movistar.com, the esports page is actually embedded on the main homepage there of the Movistar squad as well. So it's really lovely to see, Hannah, that it's fully inclusive. It's not a separate component part of the Movistar team. It's fully in-house and fully integrated, which is absolutely wonderful to see them get on board in that way.
It's brilliant. It's all the riders from the men's E-Team and the women's E-Team are inclusive of the UCI Women's World Tour squad and the men's World Tour squad, and it's fantastic. They'll all get the same bikes, the same turbo trainers, the same setup, the same kit. They'll be invited into all of their training camps as well, so they get the full the full works, as you like, as an esports rider, which is tremendous. They have full access to the staff as well, and the nutritionists, the coaches as well. So Juan Pablo Molinero is the sports director for the esports team, and it's really tremendous. And as you say, I hope more of the World Tour squads really get on board with this.
Well, look at that, Beth McGuire, as you said, one of their key signings, without a shadow of a doubt, along with Steph Clutterbuck, both two very, very capable riders. And Beth McGuire, looking at a picture-in-picture there, right near the window, making sure she's nice and ventilated, putting out, looks like, I mean, she doesn't, some of these riders, when you see them tapping out 4.5 watts a kilo, making it look so easy, again, I do feel like often I'm repeating myself, but it really gives a sense of how strong, how fit these riders really are. And that's the sort of level that you've got to be able to sustain. And even sat in the wheels there, of course, you are saving energy sat in the wheels. You've got that draft effect sat in the middle of the bunch. But Beth McGuire, just happy to set that rhythm, and this is how good you've got to be. If you want to just even stay in the bunch, you do have to be able to ride at or near your threshold pretty, like this. And it's a real stark illustration to see, especially most of you who are watching will know what it's like to ride on Zwift. You know what it's like and what it feels like to generate that power. And I think when you look at the community divisions, the riders who are competing in the community divisions today, and when they're watching this back, will just kind of know the kind of level they've got to try and achieve.
Definitely. And when you say that they're tapping out this rhythm and they're just over 4 watts per kilo, they're going at 52 kilometers per hour on this section, and it has been since the start. So it really is. For any of those watching at home, go onto your turbo and try and tap out 52 kilometers per hour and see how long you can do it for. It really is. These are the best esports riders in the world, and making it look very, very easy really is tremendous to see the pictures of the effort that these riders are putting in, but how stable, how fit these riders are.
Yep, we're just going through the S's. You can just see the dirt just being kicked up. A couple of riders going long. Huback and Hansen and Lethbridge have now gone off the front. The sprint one is coming up. Remember, we head to the Italian villas, and then we swing left to the sprint. It's coming up very, very shortly. It's a sprint that just takes us before the climb. We obviously will swing off after the climb. But Huback and Hansen here, well, we wondered how they were going to take these sprints. But Heino straight out of the blocks here with Huback and Hansen. Alice Lethbridge not too far away as well. So this was a plan. Heino are going for these points. This is quite remarkable. They're not leaving it for a sprint, Hannah. They're going full guns. and attacking this race very, very early on. Still a couple of 100 metres to go to the actual points line. But Huback, Hansen and Lethbridge, well, they're tearing this race apart, and we've only done 6 kilometres. This is magnificent stuff.
Well, they've obviously had this game plan from the start. They want to try and split it early, take everyone by surprise. And a lot of other teams and riders would be thinking, well, we still got 32 kilometres remaining, so we've got time to really make a difference. But Hino, no, they want to come in and shake things up as we see those points. Huback takes the 10, Hansen with the 9, Haag with the 8, Lethbridge from Hino as well taking the 7, Catherine Curie from I Race Like a Girl with the 6, Bexy Dew from Canyon Esports with 5, Steph Clutterbuck with the 4, Nelson with the 3, Kristen Kulczynski from 2024 with the 2, and rounding out the top 10 with 1 point, Lejeune from Canyon Esports.
Well, that is absolutely fantastic stuff from Team Hino. We wondered what they'd do. Remember, there are only 3 intermediate sprints on offer tonight. Of course, in laps 1, 2 and 3. That is the situation. Well, look at that. That devastating turn of speed has meant that after just sprint number 1, this is a real stark illustration, isn't it, Hannah, of how important these points are out on the road. The way that we've actually tweaked the points. Hino with 26. Beast mode. Great ride by them in second place so far with 8. I Race Like a Girl there, equal third with Canyon Esports in 6th. Movistar up there too with 5th. Saris and the Pros Closet not too far behind there with 3. 2024, the last team to score points. But what a start by Hino Racing Team. They took things up and went for it, didn't they? That was impressive.
Yeah, certainly stamping their authority there on those points, wanting to really make a mark, show the other teams what they've got, how strong they are. And it's almost like they want to stamp their authority, but say, yeah, we're the team. The reason why we won season 1 and 2 is because we're the strongest. Our tactics and our strength is on point. But Beast Mode, powered by Rose, great riding from them. The newly promoted team from the community division, headed up by Sebastian Wolf. So a team made up of all Germans. So great for them. And I think it's nice to see that they really deserve to be in this Premier Division.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, they've had to battle hard. I mean, last year we had the ZRL, should I say, on a Monday. Then we had the Community Division races on a Tuesday. But following this race, of course, you can actually watch the Community Division races in partnership with WTRL, hosted by Nathan Guerra and his team, but with the beauty of the digital world, remember, you can actually watch them at another time as well. So it's really, really worth having a look at the Zwift community races, because they are part and parcel of this whole league. They are vitally important. It's part of the bigger ecosystem. And as we said at the top of the show, at the end of each of the seasons, teams do drop down from the Premier Division down back into the community. But importantly, teams also get promoted up. So there's a real battle. And I think we saw that in the opening team time trial, didn't we? That there was some of the newly promoted teams are really, really well drilled. So it's no kind of fluke that they've got to this kind of level. They are very, very accomplished at what they do, aren't they?
They're well drilled, and also they've worked so hard to get from that community division up to the Premier Division. They really want to stamp their authority and also stay up into the Premier Division come the end of the season. So they want to put themselves into good stead, get the points on the board, and have a high placing early on to try and cement themselves into the league. And I think as well, once the teams have a good game plan, they have that strength. A few teams have had a few new signings come to the teams as well throughout that, not just in the teams that have been promoted, but also throughout all the other Premier Division teams. I think it makes it incredibly exciting when they're mixing it up, coming from the community division. We have thousands of teams, as you'd say, Matt, in the community divisions throughout every Tuesday night, battling it out. And the hard work doesn't stop once you've made it to the Premier Division.
It certainly doesn't. And we saw in season 2 a couple of the men's teams and the women's teams actually staying. It was pre-existing teams that had already been part of the Premiership in its first iteration were actually the ones that went down, and the newly promoted teams actually stayed in. So it just shows how truly competitive it is. And as we get through later into the season, sort of rounds 5, 6 and 7, we get a real sense of who's going to go for the championship and the podium. And also there's this battle, isn't there, not to get relegated. So there's kind of double jeopardy, isn't there? There's the win overall, and then there's that fight for survival. So it's a real textured storyline that we have. I really have enjoyed the first couple of seasons of the ZRL and really enjoying, well, I'm really intrigued to see how these new teams were getting on. But it's still all together at the moment. Still some very, very high pace. Well, it's still a very, very high pace being set. We're just coming through to the conclusion and a couple of Ks of lap number 1. We're just going through the Ocean Tubes, just emerging back. Just going through some of these giant cedars, these great oaks just on the left-hand side. And then we'll head back towards downtown Watopia to the finish line. And a first kind of look, I think, Hannah, as well. I mean, the riders would have pre-rid this course. We know that. I actually saw a couple of the teams out riding a few hours ago when I was just doing my little recon. But that finish is absolutely crucial because there's a little bit of a kicker before we turn right. And do you remember a couple of seasons ago, we saw Mary Wilkinson, who's not an out-and-out sprinter, go with about 1K to go. So it'll be interesting to see in a couple of laps' time how they actually tackle this particular sprint, because it isn't a simple one, is it?
It's not, and as you say, I think it comes down to the experience of the riders, how well they know the course, and timing it to perfection. How much effort have they exerted throughout the race as well? Because we know it's obviously easier to sprint when you've got fresher legs and you haven't had to make several accelerations in the meantime. But with those 3 intermediate sprints, throwing a bit of a spanner in the works, sometimes it does lend itself to a rider like Mary Wilkinson, who's not an out-and-out sprinter but is able to handle these repeated efforts and the intensities of the race.
Yep, and she is a rider that, as you said, would rather have an attritional race. She took that wonderful victory in season 2, but down in Harrogate, didn't she? Which was absolutely wonderful. But I'm just looking at the composition of this front group. Most of the main players are still here, but given that big surge that we saw earlier on for the intermediate sprint, that really did split things up, and we've only got 38 riders left in this front group, Hannah. We knew it would be attritional, and the thing is, explain to us what it's like if you get distance at these sort of high speeds, if you lose a couple of seconds gap, and if you don't get back on immediately, it's so hard if you're just an individual rider or even a couple of riders to get back in contact at this level, isn't it?
It certainly is. It's incredibly difficult. And when we say, you have to try and get back on immediately, you're already into that red zone. So it's very difficult to try and find that little bit extra. And depending on where you are on the course as well, if you're onto a part of the course like this where there's a slight rise, it's even harder for those riders to try and close the gap. And once you're kind of out of that draft zone, you really do kind of get shot out the back, because when you look at the riders in 39th place, we've got a huge bundle of riders 29 seconds adrift from this group. And for me, they'll never be able to come back to this front group at the speed that they're traveling at the moment, speeds of around 46 kilometers per hour. But I think once you're out of that draft zone, it's like a cone effect. And you can see the draft saving once you're in the wheels, saving 144 watts. So it just shows how much better it is to be in the wheels of your opponents.
Yep, and you'll notice that the experienced riders, if of course want to try and make it hard, they will actually go to the front and try and drag things out. But Cécile Lejeune at the moment, and she's just moving up to the front though. So as she's just moving up to the front, and she actually starts getting into the wind, that's when her draft saving isn't optimized. When she was actually back in the middle of that pack, that was when she was really saving a significant amount, and that will fluctuate depending on your position in the group. And obviously the algorithm is finely tuned to trying to replicate what it's like in real life as much as possible. And it really is quite remarkable if you've ridden on Zwift, even if you've not raced on Zwift, if you've ridden in any of the big tours, the Tour of Watopia, for example. Of course, the Tour of Watopia is actually going on, and the Tour de Zwift as well, and you've ridden in groups, you will experience that. But these riders on a course like this, especially on a flatter course, it's far easier, isn't it, Hannah, to actually save that energy. And it's a great illustration. I think that's one of my favourite new stats, is that draft saving, because you've got to be smart, you've got to save energy, especially at these high speeds. And there we go, through the finishing arch for the first time. Well, one lap is done and dusted, Hannah.
I think as well for these riders, you have to also pick when you want to move up towards the front of the bunch as well. You want to do it on a part of the course which is already, you have a lot of flow, you have a lot of high speed anyway, and you can kind of get that free speed as you just look at the way that the draft, fantastic, how the draft effect works. I mean, this is wonderful to see who...
Sorry, Hannah, I didn't mean to cut across you. It's kind of blown my mind. We've never had that in Zwift Racing before. We are pulling out all the production team today. Take a bow. They're pulling out all the stops, draft saving, and a funky draft saving graphic as well, giving you the optimum place to sit. And that is basically in the center towards the back. But as you say, you're going to save energy there. But the risk is, if there's a move that goes off the front, it's going to take you a little bit kind of longer to respond. So it's kind of, you've really got to play a canny game, and that's where this course knowledge and also the understanding of the riders that are around you, the type of where the course is, where it ebbs and kind of flows, and also the point in the races where it's kind of safer to drift back, or you need to be up and near the front. And that's why I think with each race, all of these riders are learning something more about themselves and how to optimize and how to get better at racing on this platform.
You always have to learn race by race, and for those riders, if they'd seen that first lap and seen where Heino had made that effort, they'll know, well, at that point I can't be too far back in the peloton. I need to make sure that I'm up towards the front within the top 8 to 10 riders, so that I'm able to go with any of those moves, any of those attacks from any of the teams, so that I'm ready, I'm prepared, and I don't have to make a huge effort from the back of the bunch towards the front. And as you say, in doing so, you are saving energy naturally like that. And as I said before, that in a race like this, where you're certainly going to have to make 3 efforts for the intermediate sprint, and then still to have something left for the finish, you need to find those points on the course where you can just duck and dive, use the flow of the course, the nature of the course, to get a little bit of respite. Because on a flat course, as we've seen on the hillier courses, you can freewheel, get into that super tuck. On the flatter courses, you always find yourself pedaling. There's not many options or places to freewheel.
Exactly. Well, the super tuck may have been banned IRL in real life, as we all know, but it's not banned on Zwift. So you can super tuck as much as you like in this game, but as you said, not on this particular course, because this is one of the flatter, faster courses on Zwift. On those kind of nice hilly courses, there's that opportunity to get that micro rest, get in that aero tuck, and as far as we know, it's not going to be banned on Zwift for the foreseeable future. Not quite as much risk, as we all know, but still this group moving along very, very nicely indeed, just heading towards the centre of the volcano. 15 kilometres done, and as you can see on the top left, still around 23 kilometres still to go. Mary Wilkinson sat safely in there, still 38 riders strong, but I'm wondering if we'll see something similar again. And this is a bit of a marker, isn't it? The other teams are clearly aware that Heino aren't going to chance it and just wait till the end to try and stack their riders up there. They've already raced very aggressively. They've whittled this field down to half its size. So a few of the other teams there are going to be not so much on their guard, but they're going to be really, really attuned to. They're going to have to kind of brace themselves, because I'm expecting Heino to do something similar. And the thing is, Hannah, they've got that strength to do it, to race this aggressively, haven't they?
They have. They've got a team of 5 riders who are all capable of being able to do that effort and make those repeated efforts, and still having some gas left in the tank within the team. But as you say, Matt, these teams will have seen what Heino did into the first intermediate sprint, and so now they'll be a lot more accustomed to know, okay, well, we've got to watch all of Heino now. We're expecting another effort for them to go. They've got a couple of riders who, they pack a strong sprint for the intermediate sprints, but perhaps not such an out-and-out sprinters as we can see with the likes of perhaps Jackie Godby or Beth McIver. So for Heino, I think the way that they're going to continue to pick up the points is to go for a long-range attack, or just take other riders by surprise, counter-attack each other as well. So I think you see Kristen Kulczynski now from 2024. As I mentioned before, I'm sure she's due an individual victory anytime soon. She really has come on leaps and bounds. She specialises in esports, so she doesn't actually race IRL out in the outdoors, but really focuses on esports.
I think at some point she's talking about getting that first kind of ride outdoors, but for the time being, as you said, she really has specialised. She does her yoga routines as well, just to kind of add to that core strength. She's pushing quite a big gear there, but what you see is riders just on occasions just leaning on the bike, leaning on the pedals, that kind of low cadence, high torque, then it would change around just to give an opportunity for different muscle groups to recover. And as we so well know, there's so many different styles in real life and riding on Zwift. Some riders there pedaling a very, very high cadence indeed. This is our first glimpse of the German Elisa Hag. She rides for the newly promoted team of Beast Mode, powered by Rhodes. Plenty of ride-ons there. Make sure you do give these riders some riders. She's got 11 riders there. Surely for a newly promoted squad, we could do a little bit better than that on the Zwift community. Fire up your Zwift Companion app and make sure you give these riders a bit of a ride-on. Not just the riders in the front group, but the riders behind as well. It's so important that you get involved in the community. It does make a little bit of a difference. It is always nice, isn't it, Hannah? I mean, I don't really race on Zwift, although I do get a little bit competitive. Want to get a few ride-ons. It really does just give me that little bit of an extra push just to go that bit harder.
It does, doesn't it? It's such a great motivation to see that people are taking the time to say, ride on, keep going. You're doing a great job, and it's just that mental boost that sometimes you need, and especially in a race like this where it's hard whether you're in this front group or any of the riders who are just tailed off. It's such a nice feeling to see that you've got the support from the fans at home. So definitely fire up that Zwift Companion app and head over and give the riders a ride on.
Yep, definitely. Wise words. It's now Frischt, who's now on at the front. Elisa Hag back on the front as well, just moving around. This is just a little kind of section. This is one of the few little bits of elevation, and add into the mix, it's on dirt as well. And again, in game, there'll be an added little bit of resistance. Although the elevation is only slight 3, 4, 5% at its maximum, you will get that extra bit of added drag because of the dirt that you're riding on. This is probably one of the hardest sections, and already we're seeing Hansen and Williams going again. We knew that it happened when we saw it happen on the opening lap, coming up to that sprint. And Williams and Hansen have gone again. It's Lejeune now trying to get in the mix and shut in the gap, but Williams now going clear for Hino. They are so dominant.
They are, and I'm surprised a couple of more teams weren't too wise to that coming up, but a rider who was one to close it down, or to try and attempt to close it down, was Paige Bolt of 2024, but Williams has that slight gap, just less than a second. Hansen, her teammate, just leading the pack with Lejeune from Canyon Esports on her wheels, but it looks like it's all coming back together as they lead into this sprint now, Matt.
Yep. That's certainly put a lot of riders on the ropes, but she has come back. Great riding, but Lejeune is there. Huback and Hansen aren't too far away. Beth McIver not too far away as well. Caroline Williams up near the front. Catherine Curry too. Looks like it was Godby that actually just went across the line to take maximum points there. Great riding by the rider from Saris and the Pros Closet. We get confirmation of that shortly, and there we go. Well, the results are up. So Godby from Curie, from Larson, the first rider home from Hino there was Hansen. Then we had Hag, Lethbridge, Huback. So still 3 riders in the top 10 there from Hino. And then Kulczynski there, valuable points for 2020. Bolt and Verhoeven. That is the result of intermediate sprint number 2. Our mathematicians will be busy with the abacus, and we shall get, well, look at that. Our mathematicians are on fire tonight. There we go. We've got the results through. Hino still there with 42 points, but I Race Like a Girl, well, they haven't exactly closed the gap, but they've got some more valuable points. Beast Mode, great to see them up in the mix. The newly promoted squad there in 3rd. Then we have Saris and the Pros Closet. Team Swedish Swifters emerge into the top 5 there. 2024 Canyon Esports. Well, they've got a lot of making up to. Look at the gap there. And Movistar there with 4, and then the Ionian Racing team in 9th. Again, a real illustration of, and we're going to get a replay here, Hannah. If you can just talk us through the last few hundred meters. It was quite a chaotic sprint, but again, Hino, should I say, the team, well, that have put themselves in a very, very strong position. Let's have a look at this sprint again.
Yeah, well, Williams, Caroline Williams from the Hino team was the rider who started to rip it up, but you can just see that Jackie Godby won it by a clear bike length. And it was a sprint that was very strung out. It probably didn't go to the way that Hino wanted it to, because they'd would have liked a couple of their riders to chip off the front and to not have it as a bunch sprint, let's say, for the intermediate. But Godby, one of those riders who has a great sprint on her from Saris and the Pros Closet, took that great victory in Richmond. Rider from the USA. Clearly took the points there with the 10, adding to Saris and the Pros Closet's tally. Lizzie Duncombe, the triathlete from Vision E-Racing. We can just see picture in picture there.
Yeah, she's got a fair few ride-ons there, 39 ride-ons there for Lizzie Duncan. Got the full fans on there, hair blowing, keeping her nice and cool. And we can just see her draft saving at the moment. Look at that, 212 watts is what she's actually saving. And if she was riding on the front, she'd have to basically add that onto the total to move at the same speed. So important, especially after that sharp effort there. These sprints, the approach to this the sprint on this course is absolutely crucial, because riders are making it hard there. They're making sure they're in a good position, a good kilometre before the sprint, rather than later on some of the other circuits. So I think the placement of that sprint is making this race very attritional. And the net result, Hannah, is that we've only got 32 riders in this front group. So another 6 riders were jettisoned, were detached because of the real high speeds that were set. And we've still got another full lap to go after this. So this is, again, when you look at the elevation, only kind of 49 metres of elevation over the 3 laps, but the sheer pace and the placement of that sprint is having a big effect. We've only got a small group now, Hannah.
Well, let's not forget we have those dirt switchbacks, which has an elevation of around 3, 4, 5% at max. And that really puts a lot of riders into difficulty when you look at the speed, the intensity in the lead-in to those the ever so slight elevation on the dirt switchbacks up towards the top of the Italian villas. And I think it puts a lot of riders, they're already in the red, and it puts them into difficulty. And when you go over the top, and we've seen on both occasions now that Hino have wanted to create an attack, they wanted to split things up and go solo, that puts the riders even more into the red. They're unable to hang on, and as you say, it really changes the dynamic of how the intermediate sprint is played out, because those riders, they kind of just either riders who are just being tailed off, they're wanting to get back on. Other riders are doing the chasing to our lone leader, which was Caroline Williams. So for Lejeune and Paige Bolt of 2024, they sacrificed themselves to try and close the gap to Hino, and it really did set Jackie Godby up perfectly without having to do any work at the front.
Well, this is a picture-in-picture of Team Swedish Zwifters. Anna Embrink, you can just see their window open there, making sure she's kept as cool as possible. 10 ride-ons, 83 RPM, just trying to recover. I mean, again, because of the high pace that's being set here, these riders really do need to try and recover as best they can. So she's just sitting there. She's quite near the front, but she's still actually in the centre of that group, so she's getting a real nice little bit of draft. But I must admit, that was really wonderful to see that graphic earlier on, giving you the kind of placement of the optimum spots to kind of sit in the group. But of course, as the group gets smaller and smaller, you need to think even more about where to get the least amount of drag. So that, again, that's something that comes with experience, isn't it? And how you kind of make sure you're rotating, keeping near the front to cover any moves, but using the least amount of energy at the same time. It really is a fine art, isn't it?
It is. And I think for the riders now at the back end of this race, as the bunch gets smaller, it's, let's say, easier to sit at the back of the peloton. There's less riders to have to come round as the bunch whittles down, so they can certainly make the most of the draft effect towards the back. When we start the race out and we've got over 70 riders, it's okay, you're getting the maximum amount of draft from the group. However, it's incredibly difficult to make that effort from the back of the bunch all the way to the front.
It certainly is. Let's have a look at Daniela Estrate. She's a very experienced rider, and I got a lot of fans as well. Looks like she's just taking a cheeky gel there from one of her swan years. So Daniela Estrate of Romania, very talented rider indeed. She's really smart as well. I've been watching her in this front group. She knows where to sit. She knows where to save energy. But when you look back through her races over the last few years, she's very experienced. So many podiums in some of the biggest races. She really is a class act, isn't she? And a real key rider for the Ionian racing team.
I've been keeping my eye out on Daniela throughout this race, and she's been sitting last wheel for the whole race. Despite other riders going out the back, she has always been last wheel, and every time someone starts to lose touch, she just bunny hops them, goes around them and makes her way and slots herself back into the back of the bunch. And she's been doing that for the whole race, for the duration of the 24 kilometers, and now just sitting nice and comfortably, able to take a gel, not having to take her hands off the bars, sit up, take a gel, just take that last little bit of recovery with 14.5 kilometers to go. It's a fine art.
Is it? It certainly is a fun. She's doing it very, very well indeed, almost like picking the riders off as she goes. I think the best analogy you can use is the devil take the hindmost race, isn't it? And on the track where you basically the last rider's eliminated. She's got that kind of experience, also coupled with immense strength. But have a look back through her results. She really is a classy rider. But meanwhile, heading into towards the end of lap number 2, that is a situation in relation to the ride-ons. It is Melanie King who's leading at the moment. She rides for Insured, powered by Pedal Power, and she's got a big lead. Look at that, 146 to Kessler's 108. Still with a lap to go, so a lot could change. And just a reminder, hope you don't think I'm getting on your nerves, everybody who's watching, but please do get involved. Fire up your app and give these riders a ride on. It could make just that little bit of difference as we look at Melanie King there. Just sat there looking pretty relaxed there in the all white of Insured, powered by Pedal Power. Her teammates, Morgan Shaffin, Jamie Clark, Laura Simenik and Angela Pitzer, but looking good at the moment. She's sat in that front group very, very comfortably. This is one of these little gentle rises here, and often on these flatter circuits, it can come almost as a strange relief for the road to kick up, can't it? Because it gives you an opportunity to get out of the saddle, lean on. You can actually weirdly sometimes feel like you're recovering a little bit by riding out of the saddle at a lower cadence on these little drags. It's quite interesting, isn't it?
You certainly can put it into a lower part of the block as well. And I think, as you say, for some of those riders, it's an opportunity to just stretch the legs a little bit of blood flow. But I think this is the wonderful thing on the ride-ons, just touching on that the esports and the ZRL is interactive. It's including everybody at home, for all the fans watching, that you can get involved and really support your favourite riders as we come up to completing 2 laps of racing. I'll soon hear the bell. 1 lap to go.
Yep, 1 lap to go. As you say, 2 laps down, and that means we have 12.8 kilometres to go. This is the opening points race of Season 3. Last week, of course, it was the Team Time Trial in France, but it was anything but soft. And this is another very, very hard race indeed. And we've got these additional points. Just a reminder, the top 10 on all the intermediate sprints get points, 10 down to 1. And then the first rider across the line gets 50, second place 40, third 35, fourth 30, fifth 27. And then from 6th place down, all the way down to 30th place, the points are basically on a declining scale. There's 1 point increments, so lots and lots of points on offer. So it's very important, isn't it? We've got a group. This group now, Hannah, well, is still 32 riders strong. But rather than just award the top 10 with points, it just shows that every single rider in your team counts. There's a real battle for the minor points as well, isn't it? Because they could be massively important.
It'll be vital for the whole team, and to make sure that their sports directors are communicating that as well, because sometimes when you're into that red zone, you're focused on the race, all these different aspects of the racing to remember. I think the sports directors will be crucial at this point to say you need to sprint for every placing available. And each point, as we've seen before, it really does come down to the wire. So every single 1 point counts, and that including the final intermediate sprint coming up just after the Italian villas.
Yeah, and we've seen that Hino have already dominated. They've got a lot of points at the moment. Just a reminder, they currently have 42 points. I Race Like a Girl sit in second position on the points accumulated out on the road. And if anybody is just joining us, you're wondering how this kind of works, it is a scratch race. So the first rider across the line is the winner, but the name of the game is accumulating points for your team. So there's points for the first 30 riders as they cross the line. Of course, 50 points for the winner, down to 1 point for 30th. There's points out on the road, 10 points down to 1 at the intermediate sprints. And quite simply, it is the team that has amassed the most points out on the road that then wins the night. And the first team get 20 points, second team get 19 points, and those points carry forward to the league. So it's about accumulating as many points over the course of the 8-race season. As we look at one of the favourites here, the Swede, Cecilia Hansson, one of the most complete riders out on the platform. So experienced. She's ridiculously strong. She's versatile, but importantly, she's canny. I mean, the whole of the Hino racing team, they know how to race. I mean, We talk about bike racing often being a game of chess, but they really are so tactically astute and so closely knit, aren't they, as a unit? They just kind of almost appear to be reading each other's minds.
They do, and they don't make any moves throughout any of the racing, and this goes for the team time trials, that isn't going to benefit them in the long run or at the end of the race. If it's an attack that's they don't need to make, they don't need to waste that energy. If it's a rider, they pick and choose they know the riders that they need to follow. And for Cecilia Hansen, third at the inaugural UCI Esports World Championships back last year. So a rider from the esports world, really had a fantastic race. Ashley Mulman-Passio, of course, taking the rainbow stripes. And Cecilia Hansen is she's 39 years of age, and she's the current Swedish national champion as well on Zwift. Has a very familiar style. She likes to be out the saddle for long periods of time and keeping the high cadence, but with the high power.
Indeed, it is quite an interesting style, but she's adapted. She clearly knows what she's doing, and that's what I find so fascinating. Is we've got riders that are very, very efficient, but using quite different styles quite often. Some riders use the kind of lower gears with a higher cadence, and some riders just prefer to use just to get that raw strength and spend a lot of time out of the saddle. It really is quite fascinating, and depending on the course, the course, of course, will depend a lot on how the riders kind of race it. But at the moment, for the first time, getting just a little bit tactical here. Most of the riders now on this slight descent, knocking out 2.5 to 3 watts a kilo. So the first kind of opportunity in this final lap, maybe to get a little bit of a rest, because I have a feeling that these riders know what's coming. They know that in just a couple of kilometres time, they're going to have that next intermediate split. But I'm just wondering whether riders are going to do that kind of textbook thing, or if they've got the power to basically continue going through. We see that quite often, don't we, that it's not just the points on offer that they're going for, but it's quite often the intermediate sprint can be a kind of jumping off point to try and set a breakaway up, which could happen today.
It certainly can. I think it could prove as a springboard for that finale. And I think that's what Heino have been trying to do as well, trying to break things up, and something that they could certainly do. And to quote Dave from the top of the show, maybe throw a stick of dynamite into the middle of the peloton and really light things up and blow it to pieces.
We're now looking at the stats of Shayna Paulus, our first picture of the American, very, very experienced rider. She is in that front group. A couple of riders for 2024. Kuczynski also in that front group as well. A nice rock of power-ups for the American. Again, 4.5 watts a kilo, and she's saving energy as well. So just riding in this group, you need to be very, very fit indeed. She's just drifting towards the front now, perhaps making sure that she doesn't miss any of these splits. Actually, she's drifting right to the front. And the rider on the front at the moment is actually Mary Wilkinson, Celia Hansen not too far away. Bexy Dew is there as well. Christine Falk, Lethbridge, Huback, Clutterbuck. Armitage is there. Catherine Curry, Christian Falk is there as well. So several riders you can see there from Canyon Esports, the team that finished runner-up last season. Remember, Heino are the team that have dominated the ZRL for the last couple of seasons. You can see plenty of their jerseys in there. They're the team in the red with that big white H. Probably one of the easiest teams to spot from the helicopter, let's be perfectly honest with you. But it looks as if, to me, they do have 4 riders in there, 3 riders from the Ionian race team. So good riding by the Ionian race squad today.
And props also to the Movistar squad, both them and Heino, with the big white lettering on the jersey, easy to spot, brightly coloured, as we see Sprint 3 coming up ever so shortly. And still all together, it's a lot more cagier, I'd say, Matt, into this intermediate sprint, as we saw, compared to what we saw in the first and second. Riders starting to get out the saddle now, increasing the power. Want to make sure that they're up towards the front just to cover any moves that might potentially go. Lizzie Dunn come up towards the front, Frisch as well. Catherine Curry, the former USA road race champion for I Race Like a Girl, and they've currently sitting in second overall in the team standings. Got some work to do to catch Heino.
Now they certainly have. And we've got one rider, Courtney Nelson, just drifting off the front there, just heading through the Italian villas. So she just drifted off the front, but she's brought to heel very, very quickly by Christian Kulczynski. The Frenchwoman Lejeune is there as well. Jackie Godby, the fast finishing Godby, not too far away. But as you just said, Hannah, we've seen a little bit of a different style here. The opening couple of sprints, they went very, very early on, but riders may be conscious of not putting too much of an effort here for fear of losing out in the final. And also, I think some teams are acutely aware here that this provides a big opportunity for a big split. But look at the jersey of Heine now, amassing near the front. Hansen is there, Kulczynski, Lejeune, Lethbridge, Frisch is there as well. They're starting to line things out, just rounding this left-hand corner, and it looks as if, well, definitely Saris and the pros closet. Godby takes maximum points there. So Jackie Godby is absolutely flying around this course at the moment. There is confirmation. Godby from Verhaeren, Hag in third place from the Beast Mode powered by Rose team. Huback, Larson, Hansen, Dew, Nelson, Daniela, and then Catherine Curie rounding out the top three. But look at this, Godby, has she continued on going? She's still flying. 184 beats a minute is her heart rate at the moment. But look at the situation. There's Saris and the pros closet have actually closed up. But that is a very significant points tally for the Heine racing team. So consistent. They really did set their stall out on the first sprint, have continued to score. So Saris second, good riding there, consistent there by Beast Mode. I Race Like a Girl there in fourth. Swedish Swifters in fifth. Ionian in sixth. Canyon Esports there in seventh. 2024 in eighth. And then rounding out the 9 teams that have scored, Movistar with 4 points. Look at that. The differential there, Hannah, between Heine and Movistar. 50 points out on the road. Wow, that's pretty astonishing, isn't it? But they know what they've got to do, and they've done it, haven't they, so far?
They do, and that's a huge difference. But Saris and the pros closet, who are now currently second, they're closing that gap to Team Heine. They need to make sure that they amass as many points as possible come the finish. And Jackie Godby doing a textbook ride there, carrying on her effort through the intermediate sprint, opening up that gap, and it really forced Mary Wilkinson and Cecile Lejeune from Canyon Esports to chase. So that was perfect for the other teams, that they were using the other riders to close the gap, using their energy, as we see Megan Armitage come towards the front here, and she is allowed just a little bit of daylight. Huback is the rider from Heine who's just allowing her that space. Gilson now in second place, and just steadying at just less than a second with 5.3 kilometres remaining. Megan Armitage, the Irish rider.
Yeah, sorry, Hannah. A great little move there. She's gone early there. You can just see it's pressing on, riding for the Cryo RDT. The rider from Ireland, 9 power-ups. I think she deserves a few more ride-ons, given the effort that she's making now. She's absolutely flying along here. It's only 5 kilometres to go now, and this front group has been whittled down a little bit further. There's only 30 riders in this front group now, but it does look like Armitage's time on the front has come to an end there. She's going to need to make sure, because of the size of this group now, Hannah, that she just presses on to make sure she catches that draft, because the danger is with this small group she could get spat straight out the back, and she's really having to fight to stay in contact here.
Well, just as you said that, she made that effort to make sure she stays within the wheels, and you can just see the pain on her face, the rocking and rolling of the shoulders. And it just shows how much difficulty. She wipes the sweat from her brow. How hard the back end of this race really is. 4.4 kilometres remaining, and Jackie Godby sensed the danger of Megan Armitage. She wanted to close it herself. She didn't want to leave it to any other riders. All her teammates wanted to make sure that this will end in a bunch sprint. And Godby really must be the favourite going into this closing section of the race.
Well, Megan Armitage there for Cryo RDT, riding shoulder to shoulder with a former rider from Cryo RDT. It's Beth McIver, the Scottish rider. Big signing for Movistar Esports as we just head over. We're heading towards the fishing village now. Through the docks, we will go back onto the dirt briefly, then through the Ocean Tube for a couple of Ks before we emerge back downtown in Watopia. One of these riders will emerge victorious, but it's difficult to pick out who, because looking at the composition of this front group, all of the main riders you would expect to be there are there, including some very fast finishers, Hannah.
There certainly is. It's going to be tense going into that finish for the likes of Hino. Do they want to try and go for a long one and try and really split things up? Do they want to take that risk of losing out on the big points available on the finish line? And then we can see the team of Movistar starting to amass themselves up towards the front, which will be interesting to see. But for these riders, this is the last little bit of respite, as you can see the gradient in the top right of your screen, -3%. So as we go into this Ocean Boulevard, it's the last point for riders to move up, to take a bit of respite, to freewheel, take the last little bit of a drink on board and start to prepare themselves, think of where they want to open up the sprint. What is their game plan? What is their tactic? And you can see a few riders from Saris in the pros closet just dropping towards the back of the bunch. And as I say that, Godby just moving up towards Godby's teammate, moving up through the peloton.
Oh, that shot there of Julia Schiller. I do like that kit. I do like the name of this team as well. I mean, Beast Mode powered by Rose. Real kind of, you got the Rose and then Beast. It's a real coming together, isn't it? But they've got two riders in this front group in the form of Elisa Haig and Julia Shallow. So two riders in this front group for the newly promoted German squad. Again, 3.1 watts a kilo there, well under 200 watts. So she's going to be sat in the slipstream there. It's kind of, things are steadying up a little bit. You think you can really kind of sense the tension there. The watts per kilo for this whole group starting to drop. I think riders now making sure that they're ready and fresh for what is to come. But it isn't a simple finish. We've seen riders go long before. 2.5 kilometers to go as Clutterbuck and Jackie Godby now move to the front. This is going to be very, very interesting. It won't be long now, Hannah, around a K before they emerge out of these ocean tubes back, and they will have Watopia in their sights again.
They will. They'll have to climb out of here as well, so they have that ever so slight elevation to tackle with. As we can see, things getting a lot more tense now as riders from Hino start to move towards the front. Caroline Williams just sitting in second place, and you can just see the washing machine effect almost. Riders constantly coming towards the front, other riders coming round them to try and take their place, and they all know that they need to take this sprint on from the front, as we saw before in previous races which have had the same finish. Mary Wilkinson went for a flyer and was able to hold on until the finish line, so they know they have to be aware of any last attacks, late minute moves from any of the riders. Well,
it's Ada Geese now rolling to the front. Bolt's not far behind. Jackie Godby always making sure she's there or thereabouts. She's been running very, very strongly tonight, the rider from Saris and the pros closet. Look out for her. We know how well she can finish in that yellow, white and green kit. We've got four riders from Hino there. Hansen, Huback, Lethbridge and Williams are all there. We've got Lejeune, Dew, Falk and Wilkinson, all from Canyon Esports in the mix as well. Kuczynski is there with Paulus for Team 2020. McIver is there for Movistar. Haig and Shallow are there for the Beast Mode newly promoted team. They've come out back into the sunshine. It's a beautiful day here in downtown Watopia, and in 1.2 kilometers time we will find out who is the winner of this, the opening points race of season 3 of the ZRL. And things are starting to wind up now, and it's the Ionian race team hit the front now, Hannah.
Yeah, only 30 riders in this front group, so things starting to get a little bit tactical. Canyon Esports just putting themselves up towards the front. You can just see almost like a lead-out train is forming for that squad in the pink and purple jersey. Saris in the pros closet just amassing themselves on the left-hand side with the yellow jersey and the green flags. But where is the team of Hino? They have the two riders, but they're sitting just halfway down the peloton, 700 meters remaining, and it's a rider from Movistar who comes towards the front, wants to try and move herself up as we turn right. 600 meters to go, Matt.
600 meters to go. There's a couple of left-handers, a one left-hand turn, then we have a right-hander, then that final meandering left-hander to the finish line. Duncombe is now on the front. Lizzie Duncombe Absolutely piling on the pressure here. This little right hand. This is the final, the penultimate term, and Hansen's opened it up. Cecilia Hansen has opened it up. It looks like she's been mobbed. Lejeune is there. De Geesten, Colclough, Lethbridge is there as well. But Hansen still on at the front there for Team Hino. They're just rounding the final corner. Under 150 minutes to go. Looks like Godby's coming through, but also MacGyver from Movistar. The woman in blue, MacGyver, looked like she might have got that one. We'll get confirmation in a moment, but what might have been Godby as well. But an absolutely scintillating sprint there. Very, very tight on the line. We will get confirmation in just a few moments' time. But it looks like it might have been Jackie Godby who took the win just ahead of Beth MacGyver. Absolutely fantastic finale there, Hannah. That race did not fail to deliver. And there it is. Confirmation. Jackie Godby takes the win for Saris and the Pros Closet. Beth MacGyver, the first podium in the points races for the newly minted Movistar team. And look at that. Another promoted team. Eliza Hag there for Beast Mode, powered by Rose in third place. Catherine Curry there, the first rider home from I Race Like a Girl. Then we have Louise Huback in fifth. Steph Clutterbuck making 2 Movistar riders in the top 6. That really is a top result from them. Charlotte Colclough is there for Vision. Cecilia Hansen for Hino. Courtney Nelson in 9th. And then Linda Klein is there in 10th place for the Cryo RDT. Well, I'm out of breath. They're going to be out of breath. Page number 2 coming very, very shortly. But an absolutely scintillating wing by Jackie Godby. She timed that to perfection. Opened things up, went round Beth MacGyver. We will get a slow motion replay in just a few moments' time. But there we go. Lejeune is in 11th. Then we have Barbara Frisch, another rider from the Ionian race team in 12th. Caroline Williams there for Hino in 13th. Lizzie Duncan, Audiella Verhaeren, Bexy Dew, Megan Armitage, Rachel Lieberman, Julia Schellau, and then Kristin Falk rounding out the top 10 there for Norway and Canyon. And you can just see the other riders there, well, over a minute and a half down. But and there's your final 30 riders, all scoring points towards their team. We'll leave our producers and our mathematicians, Hannah, to work out the exact points. Oh, no, we've actually got the points worked out straight away. It's going to be very, very close, I think, at the top. But remember, Team Hino were looking good. Let's have a little look at the final finish line points. Jackie Godby, we know that she would get 50 points there. 10 points to the clear for Beth MacGyver. And you can just see how the points tally favours the riders at the front end, unsurprisingly. Curry, Huback, Clutterbuck, Colclough, Hansen, Nelson and Klein there. And then from that point onwards, the riders scoring 1 increment points. So, Hannah, a wonderful race, a kind of tactical finish. But, we've been very, very quick today. Sorry to cut across you again, Hannah. We are getting the team points up on the screen. And this will give us, well, the winning team on the night. Which team has accumulated the most points? It is as simple as that. We almost need a little bit of a drum roll. But there it is. Hino Racing Team. They do it again. Well, there we go. Hardly a surprise, I guess. But Hino Racing Team, well, shows how much those points out on the road in the race counted. 128 points to the good. Saris and the Pros Closet, a very solid second place with 98. Movistar there in third. I think they're going to be very pleased with that with 76. Beast Mode powered by Rose, they're going to be very happy as well with 70. Then we have Canyon Esports in fifth. Ionian in sixth. I Race Like a Girl in seventh. Cryo RDT there with 45 points, equal with Vision. And then rounding out the top 10, Team Swedish Zwifters with 25. Moving along to page 2, 11th Team 2024 with 20 points. ATP are there in 12th with 11. And then rounding out the top 13 teams to have scored points, Ensured powered by Pedal Power with 5. And the other teams did not score any points. So that's just the top 13 teams, all scoring points. Well, Hannah, a breathless finale. I will hand over to you briefly. A wonderful race there, but we knew, or we kind of thought, didn't we, Hannah, that those points out on the road would make a difference. And they certainly did today.
They certainly did. And for me, when you look at those finishing points, how much of a difference also the finish line points make a difference. Movistar E-Team had 4 points, so they were 50 points behind Hino at one point. And you can just see how vital the points were that Beth MacGyver and Steph Clutterbuck picked up to finish in the top 10, to close that gap and to finish third overall team on the night. So really, it shakes things up in the team standings, but it certainly makes the racing out on the road very, very hard fought and very exciting, I might add.
It was a great race. It really was good. We thought that the people would change their tactics as we suggested, and as we thought. Hino out of the gates, making it very, very aggressive, scoring a ruck of points early on, almost like as an insurance policy to get those points in their back pocket. And although they didn't finish super high on the night in terms of the top 20 results, they had enough in the bag. And I think it's food for thought. A lot of teams are going to be thinking, how on earth do we play Hino? Because whatever permutation the ZRL throws at them, they adapt so quickly. It's kind of frightening, isn't it? Scary how well they adapt to whatever is thrown at them.
It is, and they obviously come into each race with a solid game plan, a tactic, and they're able to change the tactic on the road as well, as you would do in IRL. So a tremendous result for Hino, and great to see our newly promoted teams up there as well, especially Beast Mode powered by Rose and the Movistar E team.
Indeed. Well, Hannah, it's been great having you alongside me. Again, if you want to drill down a little bit further into those results, please do head to Zwift.com/Zwift Racing League, and you can find out all you need in relation to results and, as I mentioned before, in relation to what's to come this season. And you can have a look back at seasons previously, look at the action as well. There you go, Zwift.com/Racing League. Hannah, we'll see you a little bit later at the back end of the programme following the men's. But without further ado, it's time to welcome on to the hockey Mr. Dave Towle. Dave, some breathless racing there for the women, but maybe that sets the scene a little bit for what's to come in terms of tactics for the men tonight too.
Yeah, I completely agree. Take a note from Hino here, guys, and participate in every one of those bonus sprints. I don't think that any team, Matt, has the luxury of being able to say, we'll put our eggs in that finish basket and just play for that. Because even if you put 3 riders in the top 10, I mean, look at Movistar. There, they did a really good job, 2nd and 6th, and they still end up the 3rd team. That came down to Saris, the pros closet. They were very active in hunting for those bonus points. That's the game changer out here, Matt. It's going to be an incredibly exciting race, and the cherry on top of the cake is certainly going to be a sprint finish out here. So, all right, hit the reset button here. Same course, a lot of the same dynamics at play. So I'm going to expect a very, very exciting 38K out here, Matt.
I do agree, Dave. But before we look at the men's race in a bit of detail, what's in store for them, should we cast our mind back to the opening team time trial of Season 3 in France? Welcome back to Season 3 of the Zwift Racing League. It is a team time trial.
24K today, 133 meters of climbing.
Beast Mode powered by a Rose team. This is our first view of the Movistar esports team.
This is Team Swedish Zwifters here. They might be down to 4 here.
Restart are already looking at the power here. Team draft. The men in red.
Zwift Warrior Cycling.
Callas, a real mighty, strong team. Legion of Los Angeles. Looks like they've actually lost Sam Bourbon, so not a great start.
Canyon, all 5 riders together. They are hitting very, very high speeds.
The Zwift Warriors coming in. The big question is, Dave, what can Canyon do here? And it's Kirkmare who have taken the win by only 3 seconds from draft. Saris in the pros closet in 3rd place, but look how closely packed these teams were.
Wild way to start week 1 of 8 here for the ZRL.
Well, it really was a spectacular opening round. Of course, it was the team time trial. Now, the results have indeed been finalised. And to check out those results, please do head to Zwift.com/Zwift Racing League. And you can pick the bones out of what was a very, very interesting opening round. And you can also look back on seasons past and what's in store for the riders this season too on that website. So, Dave, we've got 21 teams taking part tonight. 4 should I say, newly promoted teams. But out of the squads racing on this course tonight, which 3 should we really be looking out for? What teams are your picks on this course here on the Beach Island Loop?
Yeah, it's a great question, Matt, because there's a lot of individual riders sprinkled amongst all of these teams that have a shot at the outright win today. But what team is going to have that combination of riders that have the ability to pick up the bonus points? Well, and be involved in the finish. Callis comes to mind for me, that Norwegian squad. Harvard is Gjelnes here is one of the top riders in the league and is certainly a strong finisher. So he'd certainly be the rider I'd look for in that top 10 when it's done and dusted. But all of these guys are, including Christian Ofdal here. This is a rider that should be picking up some key bonus points for Callis Esport Racing Team out here today. So absolutely, they're going to be in the mix. The next team I'm looking at really should be no surprise. PO Auto Ceramic Speed. This is a tremendous team with depth. Now, they've not only had success at the World Championships, Michael Knudsen has been an Everest virtual world champion, but on this team today, it's going to be a Jeppe Falk. We don't have a picture of Jeppe because he's so fast that he's really just a blur, to tell you the truth. No camera is able to capture an image. But Jeppe is a wattage monster. Canyon is the final team that I would look at, and this is just based on the body of their work. I mean, not one of these guys is what I would call a wattage machine. All of them, though, when you combine them up as a group, are going to be a part of the conversation. That's been the secret to their success, Matt. These guys will all be scoring points throughout the day. Lana Viasen has been one of the most consistent riders in the league. So that's a look at the teams to watch. Again, it's going to be a wild sprint when we get down to it. I'll throw it back to you, Matt, as they're going to be out on course here in just a matter of seconds.
They certainly are. They are underway. Well, they're just rolling out. Almost perfect timing there, Dave. They're underway, and they're going to start 3 laps of this Beach Island Loop course. Of course, most of the roads here they'll be very, very familiar with, but we've never actually raced the Beach Island Loop. It is what I would call a really flowing kind of circuit, only over the 3 laps, which total 38.5k, 147 metres of elevation, but significantly, and we did see that in the women's race, and you were right, Dave. We saw a far more attritional race. Those sprint points on offer, talk us through the sprint points, because it really is kind of pivotal. We've really, really changed what's on offer, and it could actually change the whole style of racing, potentially even break it up. And as we saw for the women's, it made it a far harder race. So talk us through the point structure out on the race today, mate.
Yeah, well, and this is the game changer for Season 3. I love the fact that Charlie Eisendorf came up with a course like this. Again, the sprinters rarely get an opportunity to be involved in a finale in the Zwift Racing League, CRL Season 3. This is their day. Now, the points that you're talking about, this is what's going to make today fantastic for the spectators out there. For the racers themselves, it's going to be brutal because scoring this 10 deep now, what we're looking at is 10 for the first rider over the line, down to 1 point for the 10th rider. It makes the likelihood of a split in this group a little bit greater. It changes every dynamic, to tell you the truth. But teams aren't going to be able, with 5 riders starting for the teams here, it's not like this is Tour de France where you have 8 riders and you can designate some guys to go in an early move and some guys to sprint at bonuses. Today, Matt, you got to have all hands on deck. There is no doubt about it. I mean, there are some names like, Gianni Kuhlmann is a rider that we haven't talked about on BZR SPSD. This guy can make 1,500 watts for about 15 seconds. That's enough to dim the power grid in all of Belgium. It's insane those kind of numbers will do out here, but he's got to be in position. There's other riders today that have that kind of a sprint. We've talked about Ingo Reichardt from the Kirkmeyer team. Jeppe Falk, who I mentioned in the opener of PO Auto Ceramic Speed, very dangerous rider, as is Havard Gjelnes. The 2, though, that I'm really expecting to have a breakthrough ride today, as we can see Ashton Lambie. It is so good to have Ashton Lambie here with us. I want to mention Brian Hodges and Thomas Thrall of Insured Pedal Power, along with Ed Veal of Draft. These are the riders that I have on my short list of sprinters. This man right here, he's held the world record in the individual pursuit. Matt, that's a blue ribbon event. The kilometer, the individual pursuit. These are the events. I mean, literally, like the 100 meter, the 400, the 800, the 5,000. These are the events that we really, throughout all of human time on planet Earth. This is like the heavyweight world champion, right, Matt? Being the individual pursuit world record holder says that you are one of the most elite athletes. You're like a Michael Phelps category, and I'd put Ashton Lambie right there. Ashton Lambie is one of the most interesting men in bike racing today, Matt.
He certainly is. He's got an interesting look as well. I'm loving that kind of 80s vibe with the headband there, the vest as well. But as you said, very, very capable rider. And so riding at the kind of pace he is in this group now, this little bit of a kicker through the centre of the volcano, kicking up to 6.5 watts a kilo, but he looks so kind of relaxed. And that ability to ride at threshold, I think is going to serve him very, very well. And I think as we're looking at Ashton Lambie there, as they emerge back out of the volcano again, it's worth just talking briefly about the brand new teams here. We saw the team time trial last week, but if you're joining us for the very, very first time, we've got 4 new teams in the Premiership of the ZRL. We've got Movistar, of course, who are got a very, very interesting roster. A couple of great signings from them. Pim van Emden, he came across from the Dutch racing team, and then Vidal Mel, who came across from Callas, alongside Miguel Andres, Daniel Gild and Jimmy Kershaw from the UK. The other 3 teams that are promoted, Movistar are a wild card as BZR Sportsbot are solid. Look out for them with the blue, the navy blue and the light blue kit. Next Esports, of which of course Ashton Lambie is a member. Look out for them in that green kit. And the final new addition to this league are Beast Mode, powered by Rose. They've got a very, very strong lineup indeed, and they're a team that's run by the coach of Jason Osborne, who is the men's UCI world champion. So that team, although they're newly promoted, Dave, they come with so much knowledge. And if you look back to the way the women raced, they're clearly very, very well organised, aren't they?
They certainly are, Matt. I really like Christoph Thiem on that Beast Mode presented by Rose team, and certainly a rider to watch today. There's another rider on next as we're just looking at the new teams to Season 3 here coming out of the community where they really stood out. That's Brian Duffy on that next eSport team. He is a great sidekick for Ashton Lambie to have here as we're in with Miguel Angel Andres here, a Spanish rider who just went through that rigorous competition to join the Movistar team. That was really fun to watch, and they certainly sorted things out there. So out on lap number 1 right now, I think this first sprint is going to tell us a lot. I'm expecting that we'll have our introduction to BZR, another one of our new teams here for Season 3, and meet Gianni for the first time. I'm expecting him to flex his muscles out here as we take a look at Ashton Lambie. What most people call their pain cave is Ashton Lambie's patio of pleasure. This guy can go much, much deeper than your average human being. There's no doubt. If there was a rider who had a chance to make... Leonard Tugels is another rider, a Belgian, that I like a lot, who's got the kind of ability to just scrape the bottom of the barrel, to tell you the truth. But Ashton Lambie is one of the few riders that could do what he's doing right now. I'm not sure why he's doing this, Matt, but it's
going long, isn't it? It certainly is. Sorry to cut across you there, David. Just notice he has gone early, and you're talking about his kind of ability, and I'm wondering if this is a bit of a tactic. They're just heading up towards these little gravel switchbacks here. Look at the face of Lambie rocking and rolling. I think he might have gone just a little bit too early there, but he's certainly the kind of rider that's capable of going long, but he has been reabsorbed back into the bunch there. We've got about a kilometre to go before the sprint. We just head into the Italian villas, then we swing left. But very, very interesting. The approach, I think, Dave, to this sprint is absolutely crucial, because look at the way the bunch is lined out. 1 or 2 riders have actually been dropped just on that gentle rise up. So even before you get to the sprint, a lot of riders are going to be very, very uncomfortable. This is no armchair sprint here, is it?
No, not at all. Ashton Lambie just had his welcome to the ZRL moment. To tell you the truth, it's such a greater depth of ability that you see in the Premier League than he would have been seeing last season racing in the community. I mean, every one of these riders are monsters, and here we go. They're lighting this one up early. They're stringing the group out. More gaps opening up here in the field than we could imagine. And let's take a look. Is it going to be Ingo? We talked about the top sprinters, and I think Ingo might have been first over the line. Ingo Reichardt of Kirkmeyer. Bo,
Well, let's have a
Knudsen?
look. It was actually, Knudsen that just took the points there ahead of Glednius. One of your tips, Rijkaard there in third for Kirkmaier. Then Van Elst, Voets. Mario Voets, of course, a very, very talented rider. A winner of a round last season for Dutch racing there. Emmerich, Kirkmaier, Voldegger, Koeman. Another rider mentioned by yourself, clearly very quick. And then Pedersen. So an interesting situation there. Knudsen taking maximum points. And that will, of course, we'll have in a few moments' time what that kind of means from a team standings. And I do think just the sheer amount of points on offer, we saw it dramatically affect the outcome of the women's race. And it is, if you can go out on the offensive, Dave, score points early on, it is a kind of insurance policy. There is an investment there. It's going to clearly tire out your riders, especially the level that we've got here. But it does give you that little bit of an insurance for later in the race, doesn't it?
Well, Michael Knudsen, before the race, was telling me that he had designated by the team to go for these bonuses. This man is the Swiss Army knife of bike racers. He can climb like an angel. He sprints like a gorilla. This is a fantastic ride and a great sign for PO Auto Ceramic Speed, as they were to get a couple riders up there picking up 14 points. You can see the Kirkmaier E-Racing. They should be very happy seeing those 12 points there. Callis Esport Racing, they came to play today with 9 points. BZR Sports Solid with 9 points. So those two teams slotting in the top 3 right now. Dutch Racing with 6. Beast Mode presented by Rose with 5. Well, that was very telling, Matt. To be honest with you, expect to hear more from those teams here as they're setting a standard out here on lap number 1. The sprint line that you're looking at that we just went past is not the finish line for the race, as you would have noticed with the women. So we have 2 more sprints, 4 points, 10 deep coming up there before we head in. Boy, Matt, you would think with 50 points for the winner, 40 for second, 35 for third, that would be the big story. But to tell you the truth, because that is a significant change from season 2 and season 1, but really the big change is what's happening with these bonus sprints now, how deep these guys are going, and what a significant impact it's going to have on the race here.
Oh, massively. And Dave, as we look at Jonny de Broek just on the front there, the Belgian. First look at the Belgian riding for one of the newly promoted teams, BZR Sports Solid. He's looking relatively comfortable. Two little ride-ons there. Please get involved. Fire up your Zwift Companion app and give these riders a bit of a ride on just for added encouragement. But just to go back to your point, Dave, PO Auto Ceramic Speed there, 14 points in the bag already. 2 more opportunities to score points out on the road before the all-important sprint to the finish, where there's 50 points, then 40 points, and then 35 points. There's some really big teams that have missed out. Canyon Esports, not a point on the board already. Saracen the Pros Closet, no score. Legion of Los Angeles, no score. Dutch Racing, no scores. That is, to me, quite telling. I'm just wondering whether they just didn't fancy getting involved early on or are leaving it till a little bit later. But already, that's quite a big gap to try and make up, isn't it?
That's a fantastic point, Matt. And I honestly think that this comes down to firepower. Some teams have it, other teams don't. Now, when you look at those points that we're talking about based on each race that we have, 50 for the win, as we were just talking about, this will come into play much, much more when you look at the races that have got more vertical gain, more climbing. Today, it's about raw wattage. What teams can get sprinters up there, position them. This is going to be the most unique day of racing that we have in the first 3 seasons of the Zwift Racing League, without any doubt. This is a fantastic, and when you look at it, Matt, Canyon, who are normally, as you just said, they are normally all over these bonuses and picking up points. They don't have a sprinter really that can make much more than 1,000 watts. Other teams have got guys that can go into 12, 13, even 1,400 watts for the sprint. That's just flat out, what can you do? You're showing up at a gunfight with a knife.
When you look back over previous seasons and you look at the way, let's face it, Canyon Esports are one of the best drilled squads, but maybe they're just holding back a little bit. And we have seen them on a couple of occasions. One that springs to mind was back in New York when it was one of the first actual esports lead-outs. Whether towards the back end of the race we might see something like that. I'm just trying to think aloud, because it's very rare, thinking back through the previous rounds, thinking how many points are on offer, that they're there must be a reason for that. I can't see them. I just think they're holding something back, maybe to try and go on the offensive. But as you said, they've got riders that would prefer a far more attritional kind of race. It may be that they're just saving themselves to kind of bunch up, try and get as many riders in the top 10 and saving themselves from getting caught in the melee of these early sprints, which can come at a real cost, especially the run-in to that sprint. That little climb through the S's on that gravel, that's a really tough 2 or 3 Ks, isn't it?
It certainly is, Matt. But when you look at it now, so these races are almost always under an hour. It's going to be 4 massive efforts that the sprinters make. That's right in their wheelhouse. This is something that, especially for those that have raced in North America, sprinting for preems in the middle of a criterium, it's really, really similar, to tell you the truth. So these riders are going to be very well prepared. That top 10 that we looked at from sprint number 1 probably won't be significantly different when we look at sprint 2 or 3, or, to tell you the truth, even the finish here. So how do you crack the code if you're a team like Canyon or a team like Legion of LA? This is a tough day. I mean, we've talked about the fact that, there are horses for courses in racing. And today's a sprint day. And if you've got a team that has a couple strong sprinters, this is your day. You better make hay when it's in the field, because next thing you know, we're going to be back in team time trial mode where your team may struggle a little bit. So if this is your day, you want to make every opportunity you can pay off for you. So taking a look at this group, Matt, another thing that's noteworthy here is these athletes, and the percentage of difference in ability and talent is so small at this point that you don't see guys getting dropped like you would in some of the lower divisions. They can hang on. They can stay in the draft. It's just they can't participate in the sprint.
Exactly. It is very interesting, the kind of numbers, as you said, the extraordinary numbers it takes to kind of win a sprint at this elite level is quite phenomenal. And almost you think, well, because I can't compete, I'm just going to have to wait, and when the race kind of gets naturally attritional, almost for that natural kind of selection, as we look at Cyber Welling here, rider looking pretty comfortable. The Dutchman there setting up just on 4 watts there, and then look at the draft saving there. The first time we've seen this on the men's race here. The draft saving is basically how much this particular rider is saving in watts, as opposed to the rider that's just sat right on the bunch, on the front of the bunch, and taking all of that wind. So the optimum place, as you well know, Dave, to sit, especially in a bigger group, is towards the back end in the middle of this group. And we've got a rider that's just chipped off. Well, Bruce Bird, the Canadian, has flown the coop again for team at draft. He's a rider that's done this before, but he's going very, very long, just coming up to the end of a lap number 1. So 12.8 Ks will have been done when he takes the line for the first time. This, of course, is our first glimpse at the approach to the finish line. But we've seen Bruce Bird do this before. But hey, this is a bold, bold move by the Canadian in the red with that big D.
Yeah, as they say in Canada, Canuck up, and that's
Big
exactly what Bird is doing. This is a very strong rider. I have a feeling, Matt, this is a one-play for 10 points right now. His advantage is 4.5 seconds here. I have a feeling that he's going to pot commit here, push all the chips into the middle of the table and see if he can get those 10 points. So right now they're coming fast and furious, though, as they start setting things up. But Bruce Bird doing a really good job. He's flogging himself like a rented mule right now. Look at this effort as he's up out of the saddle. Great job by Bruce Bird here, animating the race. It takes a brave rider, Matt, to attack out of this field.
Well, I mean, these are the riders that make bike racing in real life or in the virtual world. You need riders to take a risk sometimes, to gamble. That's what, and it's riding with real panache there. But as you said, it's going to be hard to hold off the might of that group, which is moving very, very quickly. We're just moving away now from downtown Watopia. This is this nasty little drag. Just go through the kind of rock archway before we swing a right turn and head back towards the volcano. But he's holding them at 4.4 seconds. But the big question, Dave, as we well know, at what cost? Because over this little drag here, he's putting out 7.3 watts a kilo, which we know it's going to take a superhuman rider to sustain it. But you've got to doff your cap to the Canadian, because he is, week in, week out, he is unafraid and nearly caught them unawares a couple of back in season 2 into the center of the volcano. Do you remember he went with about a K to go, got caught with only 200 meters to go? But I think you're right. I think this is a long play to try and get those points, and he's having to work very, very hard indeed.
Well, win, lose, or draw, Matt, this is the kind of rider that makes racing so much fun, as he's going to give us a bit of a storyline here through the second chapter of the race today. I mean, he's all in. I mean, completely committed here. And as it goes up to 7 seconds or close to that, you start wondering, when do they fully engage in the chase, or do they write this off? Do they let the draft rider have the 10 points? Because, Matt, I don't know that I'm going to put 2 riders on the front right now to chase back one when second place is 9 points here. That's not enough to make it worth burning a match, to tell you the truth. I would let him go.
I agree. Especially they're a team. I mean, Drotha is a very, very solid team. They wouldn't occupy this Premier Division if they weren't a solid squad. But they're a team that kind of are solid performers rather than spectacular. But I think they're going for these kind of points early on. And given the points that have been scored at the moment, Draft hadn't scored any points, so you wouldn't have thought it would affect the kind of equilibrium overall. But it is providing a good opportunity. But the gap is starting to come down a little bit. But look at that, still pushing out 6.6 watts a kilo as the other riders just rotate and drift to the front, keep that speed kind of high. This is an amazing performance. He's only got a couple of Ks to go now. He's just rounding the back of the volcano, heading into the volcano, a place that he knows very, very well. Then they'll drop back down. And I think it might be the approach to this intermediate sprint that could be the death knell for this rider, because it's that gravel sector, as we well know, Dave, it kind of almost draws the life out of you, doesn't it? It's almost like riding through treacle up that little drag.
We were comparing it to riding through wet carpet the other week, and it definitely, you just feel all of the energy getting sucked out of your legs, and you just feel like it's not turning into forward momentum, that's for sure. Well, here we go. At this point, Bruce Bird has got to feel like he's passing a kidney stone, because it's going to take an incredible amount of pain to hold off the field from here on in. The gap is down to 2.5 seconds. This is what's so exciting about adding value to these bonus sprints. I think they're going to catch him. As you can see now, the inevitability of the physics of the just, that is a tremendously strong group bearing down on Bruce Bird. But Bruce Bird, I salute you. Thanks for making that fun to watch there out here on the second lap. But let's hit the reset button. We've got some points to score here, as these guys are going to start galloping here for our second bonus sprint. Again, scoring this one 10 deep, from 10 points for the winner down to 1 point for the 10th rider across the line. We'll add that to the first sprint we've had and see where things stand here at the middle part of the race.
Indeed. Well, the team that scored the most points so far, as we well know, as a team that we didn't necessarily expect that would do that, but we'll get did that. The team PO Auto Ceramic Speed. Remember, they got 14 points. They scored very, very highly indeed. It's all about getting numbers up there, and it will be very interesting. Could actually turn this race on its head if they score something similar again, because then that big gap in points will really start to open up, forcing the other teams to try. And I'm just wondering if some of the teams that rested on lap number 1 are going to have to get stuck in the mix here, because if the teams start scoring too many points, it makes it increasingly more difficult as we head towards the finish. But we have got another rider just chipped off the front there, Ryan Rudderman, another Canadian. The Maple Leaf just drifting off the front there from Next Esports. I think he's just been brought back into the fold. This is where we start. The road just starts to rise a little bit. Just heading through out of the volcano, and then we start picking up again on this gravel section here. But Zwan now on the front, Michela Andres there also on the front as well, as we look at the Welshman Joe Rees inside his, well, it's not really, it is a pain cave, but it looks like that's his extension in the back garden, but nice and ventilated, which is what you need at these sorts of speeds, Dave.
A pain greenhouse sounds very luxurious in this day and age, I must say. Well, look how much reshuffling they're doing on the front here, Matt. As it's starting, you can see the spearhead shape of the peloton now tells us that this is full gas at this point. It's incredibly hard. As a matter of fact, as you look, Matt, see how few riders are moving up right now. It takes a superhuman effort to do that. So Felix Schwebe, the German rider, up on the front. Ryan Rudderham has done a great job of holding position up there. There's Jaden Yeager, another workhorse of a rider out of Wisconsin here in the United States that looks like he wants to contest. I'm seeing a lot of new names, to tell you the truth, up on the front of the group, but I expect they're going to be swarming here as we come up on this second bonus sprint.
Yep, they're just approaching that little bit of a rise. You can just see the top right-hand side of your screen. As the percentage starts to rise, you will see the watts per kilo start to rise as well. I'm expecting maybe a few to nudge into the red, and there it is, Rijkaard with 8.2. West there, Alex West, a rider from Canyon. Remember, Canyon Esports didn't score any points on that first intermediate. The dust is being kicked up here on this little switchback, still continues to rise at 3%. A lot of these riders now, with the sprint coming up in only around 1300 metres, are going to be already put in the red, but it's Offendal now on the front. Mike Cumming there, moving to the front there for Saris on the pros closet. And it is Lionel Vujasan on the front there as we head just through the Italian villas. Then we will swing left, and we've got about 800 metres to go to the sprint here, and it's bunching up a little bit. Nobody willing to take this up now, Dave.
I'll tell you what, Michael Knudsen here as PO Auto Ceramic Speed, they might be the one team that's got the luxury of being able to have role players out here today, as Jeppe Falk, PO Auto Ceramic Speed rider, has been able to lay back a little bit. You could see now, all right, throttle completely open up. We are locked and loaded. Sprint 2 has engaged. It looks like Lee. There's Stefan Kirkmeyer making a run at it. Let's see how this scores. There's the group of 10 over the line. Was it? Well, let's go ahead and let the points settle here. It's going to be interesting. It is a bunch of new names. There you go, Matt.
It is indeed. Well, Warner took the points there ahead of Vidar Mel. Of course, Vidar Mel now riding for Movistar. Emmerich is there, Tim Glednes, of course, Kirkmeyer from the Kirkmeyer team, Pedersen and Knudsen, and then Van Alst, and then Aikida, of course, from the Zwift Royer cycling team, rounding out the top 10, but no riders from Canyon Esports in the mix there. This is an absolutely fascinating tactical game. Let's have a look at how that actually, I think we're going to see that PO Auto Ceramic Speed are going to end up in a very, very strong position, Dave, because this is a really interesting point score. More, not so much on who scored points, but the teams that still haven't scored points. Absolutely fascinating stuff.
I agree. And if you look at it there, that's going to be a nice 7 points with Pedersen and Knudsen on PO Auto Ceramic Speed, which it's going to be very, very close when you look at the top teams out here now based on points. But there it is, 21, so just 1 point better than Beast Mode, presented by Rose. Kirkmeyer E-Racing at 17, 2 points ahead of Callis Esport Racing here, and then BZR Sports Solid. So Kirkmeyer was a community promotion from season 1 to 2. Callis a promotion this season. So BZR Sports Solid a promotion this season. So good to see them stepping up and making a mark here already. So there we have it. The teams that have been committing. You can see 21 points already for PO Auto Ceramic Speed. And that's as good as at the finish line, about a 7th or 8th place.
That certainly is. We're going to have a look at that sprint again in an action replay. They left it very, very late indeed. There's a few riders that kind of made it hard on the approach up the S's, but this was the moment that they crossed the line. Just see that here, another little camera angle there. Second place, you could just see there for Vidar Mel. And then the rest of the team, a few little gaps, a few little fissures starting to appear, but that means that PO Auto Ceramic Speed, as Dave illustrated there, in a very, very strong position. And remember, there's still another sprint to go, so still another 10 points on offer next time through before we hit the finish, and more points on offer on the finish line as well. Remember, 50 points for the winner, 40 points for second place, then 35, 30, 27, 25, and then from 6th place down to 30th, the points are there are 1 increment points all the way down. So still a lot of points on offer, but there are some teams now, Dave, some of the favoured teams in this league now have got towards the back end of this race. They've got a lot of work to do, and I'm just wondering if there is some overarching plan that the teams are kind of happy, I say happy in inverted commas, but they've got a plan that they're kind of sticking to and are really going to try and shake things up a little bit later on. This is really, really fascinating. This hasn't gone, Dave, like the way I expected it. I don't know how I kind of really expected it to go, but I didn't expect some of the biggest teams on the platform not to have scored any points. They've got a lot of work to do. They may actually be gambling here. This is fascinating.
There are a few teams that will be petitioning to see more stages like this, and this is really a great example of the range that we could be seeing in the ZRL. I really think that today will stand out. We're in with the Austrian rider now, Stefan Kirchmeier. Stefan has built up a huge support system around himself and the Kirchmeier sports program there. Most of the riders are German. There's that nice mix of Austrian and German riders on the team, but Stefan should be proud of what this team has been able to do. Is he is sitting right in the sweet spot there, Matt. I really like how this illustrates. We've been talking about draft savings. Well, you're not going to do too much better than Stefan is now as he settles back in. His team has been participating in the bonus sprints and more than keeping their head above water. So you make an excellent point, Matt, about this storyline today hasn't been so much about the teams that are scoring points, but the teams that haven't. Because if you go back and look at which was a wild and woolly team time trial last week, well, this is, again, polar opposite as we've got Zwan off the front right now. Again, you always wonder what is going on with these attacks, and are they trying to set the table for riders to come up and join, Matt, and make it a real run? Because it's going to take 4 or 5 riders working together at this point. Again, a little over 38K of total racing today. So you can see with about 15.5 kilometers of racing remaining, one solo rider trying to hold off this field. You're like Don Quixote.
It's a big ask, but again, we always say it's kind of almost like a suicide mission. But you know, racing wouldn't be racing. Imagine if riders just wanted to just sit in the bunch and just conserve energy. Of course, that is an important thing to consider, but we do need riders to go on the offensive. And Zwan has got a couple of seconds lead here. Heart rate hovering around 162. He's having to push out, you know, at least 1.5 watts per kilo more than the group behind. I mean, riders can just roll on the front, then roll back, saving lots more energy. That's why the bunch moves so much more, not so much quickly, but it can move quickly when it needs to. The bunch just moves far more efficiently than one solo rider out there who just has to continue working without any rest. But Tibor Zwan, we know the Dutch racing team finished strongly last year, and of course they had individual wins courtesy of Mako Voits. They're a team that know what they're doing. They really are. But I'm kind of surprised that maybe it is one of those moves where he's expecting some riders to come across, and that does happen in racing. You go clear, expecting to be joined by somebody, and then it doesn't happen, and it's like, what do I do now? I'm kind of committed now, so I've got to keep on riding. So there's one here, putting out, still hovering around 5 watts a kilo, but his lead's gone up 3.3 seconds. This is a solid ride here.
Yeah, you feel lonelier than a stag date at prom when you're out here alone. You know, you really wish you had a date because no one wants to do this alone. I mean, you've got the hammer and tongs out now. Just look at the numbers, right? Zwan has been staying over 5 watts per kilo here, that's an uncomfortable territory to be in, while all the other riders sitting back in that group are ranging, you know, right around 3 to 4 watts per kilo. That is a massive, massive difference. You know, I'm looking at it, Matt. You know, the way the points have been distributed, yeah, I get it. PO Auto Ceramic Speed sitting on 21 points, and they've got 3 or 4 teams that are within just a couple points of them. That distribution, however, leaves it wide open for, let's look at a team like Insured presented by Pedal Power. They have 2 riders that could go top 5 today. If they really have their day and time to sprint perfectly, Tom Thrall and Brian Hodges could upset that proverbial apple cart because there's a lot of points there. So, again, if you have gone conservative out here, look how it's stringing out now. This is a big pressure moment, Matt. We're in with Tibor Zwan now. This is what that chase has done. He lit the fuse. I'll give him credit for that. Racers make the race, and Tibor, you certainly played your role, but we are Grupo Compacto. Hal Davies, the Welsh rider, has moved up to the front. There's another Canadian out of Vancouver, British Columbia, Matt Usborn. He's a closer. That man knows how to suffer, no doubt about it. Spencer Segabruch, he's one of the Canyon riders that's now starting to insert themselves into the conversation, Matt. So the cast of characters changing a little bit up on the front. We've got another bonus sprint, and then our final sprint of the race here, where it all will be on the line. Buckle up. Here we go. We're down to 13.3K of racing remaining. This will go by very quickly here.
It certainly will, Dave. As you said, coming up 2 laps done here. This is week 2 of season 3 of the Zwift Racing League. It is all about points. It is a points race, points make prizes. It is the team that accumulates most of the points out on the road and at the finish that will win. Of course, there is the glory, the individual glory of winning the scratch race on the day, but more importantly, it's accumulating as many points as you can. And we do have one lap to go now. Back through the finishing arch. That is their final glance at the finishing arch in this more benign state. Next time through, they'll be thundering across to try and see who takes the win. But riders jostling for position here. Still a few kilometres to go now. The intermediate sprint on this course comes at around 6Ks in. And this is where the road just gently starts to rise as we look at the figure of Matt Osborne there. A bearded Matt Osborne communicated up, of course, got his headphones stuck in. He's only got 7 ride-ons there. Come on, guys. Get on your Zwift Companion app, get involved in the conversation and encourage these riders, because believe you me, this last lap is going to be very, very painful indeed. And Matt Osborne just sat on about 4.8 watts a kilo there, making it look relatively easy. And believe you me, not many riders could ride for very long at all at that sort of power. They are motoring along here, Dave. Up the drag now, well into our final lap, and we have another attacker.
One solo rider, and I think it's Howell again. Howell Davies making his mark. Matt Osborne is out on his patio in a high-rise in downtown Vancouver, one of the most modern cities in the world, Matt, a place I'm sure that you would love up there in Canada. Boy, you know, the Canadians have been all over the front of this bike race on various teams out here today. Restart Racing has been strong, no doubt about it, but here we are in with Davies now, and you can see he's starting to open up that gap. This is the 3rd rider that we've seen make this play, as now how over 3 seconds. So he's committed to this. And I have to think, again, this is about the bonus points, not the finish of the race. I'm not sure if you're tracking on the same line of thought as I am there, Matt.
Yep, I think he's got to be. I mean, to go this long is bold. I mean, to go this long even for the points, because he's still got around 4 kilometres of solo riding. But maybe he's been buoyed by the 2 attacks. Bird attacked earlier on. And then, of course, we saw Tibor Zwan attack as well. Maybe he's just thought, well, I'm just going to go for it, see what happens. And he's looking good, but we know he's a very, very capable rider indeed. And he, again, he's opened up that lead. I think the biggest lead we've seen tonight is around 5 or 6 seconds, and he's hovering around that point. But to sustain it with so much at stake, Dave, is very, very hard indeed. But he's doing a very, very good job indeed. Davis there, the Welshman, as you said, 350 watts, hovering at around 6 watts per kilo there. This is really going to start to hurt here as he rounds the backside of the volcano. Not too much elevation at all on this course, but it looks as if they're bearing down on him very, very quickly indeed. That gap has been shut down as we enter into the volcano. Looks like we've got some pretty aggressive racing coming up, Dave. The bunch now really starting to thin out.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at this. It's splitting up all over the place. This is that stick of dynamite that we were talking about earlier. Let's take a look. So Matt Osborne, Gumbel, this is going to be Tibor Zwan again getting up in the mix. There's Jane Yeager, another Canadian there, Luc Gilbeau. This is the first time we've seen a split like this, I would say, in all 3 seasons. We've got 5 riders opening up a 1.5 second gap right now. So that is a lot of points going up the road right here. They're going to weld that back together, Matt. They can't play around with this one here. Let's see if they can shut this down. Boy, left, right, and center. This one is all over the shop. What a thrilling day of racing this one has turned out to be. We're down to 10K of racing left. What dynamics are playing out now? Well, this will be the final bonus sprint that we're coming into here.
Yep, Osborne now on the front, Rees, Van Diemen. As you said, that was a very, very dangerous move. Just using that little bit of elevation as they headed through the centre of the volcano. These little rises are few and far between on this course, but it does provide a little bit of an opportunity for riders to attack. But as you said, the teams were straight on it. There was no way they were going to let such a potentially powerful move, Dave, go clear. And there was no hesitation at all. I think it was Beast Mode powered by Rose that were the team that actually brought it back together. And now Rudaham on the front, Osborne, Segelbrook, Steinman, Buehler, De Block, Dan Fleeman now, a rider who knows how to win on this platform, riding for Saris and the Pros Closet. He's not too far away, but only a few Ks to go now until the all-important intermediate sprint, which comes with only around 7 or 8 Ks to go.
That's Gianni Kuhlman moving up to the front. You've got to get the timing right. This is as tricky as it gets where you're in a group of gladiators like we've got here in the ZRL. That's going to be Ryan Rutherham that we're looking at now in the red as he opens up nearly a 2-second advantage. It's going to be Daniel Turek and Dan Fleeman leading the chase. Then Luc Gilbeau and Matt Usborn, they're back in the front of the vanguard of the chase. All right, this is another big effort. I am really impressed with how active it has been on the front. These guys are not waiting for the race to come to them, Matt. These guys are all over this one as we're looking at now, again, Ryan Rutherham in the red of draft. They certainly deserve a tip of the hat for being very, very aggressive today.
This is what it's all about, Dave. This is what's making the other teams have to chase a little bit. It's a dangerous move. Bruce Bird went earlier on, spent around 3.5 kilometers off the front. But what you do when you race like this, you can actually provide the catalyst because it looks like there's a rider coming across the gap. It is Thibaut Zwan and Huel Davis. So it's Zwan, so Rotherham is now leading for Canada and, of course, Team Draft. Thibaut Zwan of the Dutch racing team is now punting himself across this gap. This is fascinating racing. It really, really is. The gaps are still very, very slender. 8 kilometers to go, but only a couple of Ks to that sprint. This is that nasty little series of S's on this gravel sector here. This is where the road starts to kick up just a little bit. It's flat now, but then the road starts to rise. But this is a great bit of riding by the Canadian, and it looks as if Zwan is going to try and get across on this gap. Zwan is absolutely on fire. Look at the stats of Rodham here, Dave. 7 watts a kilo. Can he hold on? It's a big ask.
It certainly is, but Zwan looks like he's channeling, well, he was channeling his inner Cancellara, but now you can see the force of the peloton as they roll through, make the catch. They've got Rutherham in their sights right now, and it looks like they're going to reel this one back in through this challenging sector here. So we'll basically hit the reset, but this race is absolute pandemonium coming into the last 7.5 K. It is in no way a guarantee that we're going to see a bunch gallop out here, Matt.
No, it isn't. We've got Kershaw there, the Brit riding for the Movistar team, just drifting on the front. He's got Hana with him as well. This is the final sprint, or the penultimate sprint of the night. This is the final intermediate sprint coming up, in Kershaw and Hana have just eked themselves off the front. This is the start of this sprint. It's actually measured over 400 metres. The riders will note like the back of their hand, and they are starting to open things up. Kershaw is there, Osborne, Kirkmare, he featured earlier on. Pim van Diemen is also there. It looks like it's Kirkmare who's well in front as they round the corner here. Well, a stunning turn of speed by the German, but has he gone too early? I think he has. It looks like it's Warner who might have got that just on the line. Zach Warner looked like he took that. We get confirmation. We look at the stats of Takada Ikeda. Well, an absolutely spectacular sprint, and look at the gaps that are starting to open. There's a few riders here, Dave, that are really, really on the limit. There is confirmation. It was Warner from De Brock. Kirkmare, well, he held on for 3rd place. Mike Cumming there for Saracen the Pros Closet in 4th. Aikida for Zwift Warriors there in 5th. Then Van Ruth. Vujasan, the first time we've seen Canyon Esports score points on these intermediate sprints. Knudsen, Lee and Van Diemen rounding out the top 10. What a fascinating sprint that was, Dave.
I think the big hitters took that one off, Matt, to tell you the truth. Outside of Vujasan, I think the guys that are looking to pick up the 50 points and take the maximum points at the finish must have decided, because this sprint comes up pretty quickly. They're about 6K from the finish line right now. So that's pretty quick to reload after that one, because that was brutal. These guys are digging incredibly deep out here, and it is going to be the Canadian, Matt Usborne, attacking again. This man has been relentless out here today. This has turned into an absolute slugfest as we go into the final few minutes of racing. Let's take a look on top of the table now. It's Kirkmaier, Matt. They go 1 point over the top of PO Auto Ceramic Speed after we score the 3rd and final bonus sprint. All right. One last sprint, and it's the big one, the granddaddy out here after 38K. This one will be done and dusted. There are a lot of teams in the hunt looking for the top points on the day, but let's take a look at the replay, Matt.
Yep, this replay here, just see another little cheeky camera angle there, just showing that sprint all across the road. It opened up very, very early on, but that was a superb win there by Finesse Esports. Great riding there by Osborne. And Osborne is now clear. He's got a 4-second lead there. Turek is in second. Vuyasan now doing a little bit of chasing here. This is a fascinating move. Osborne, we know, is a classy rider, but has he got the strength? 5Ks to go now. He's got a lead of 4.5 seconds. This is a bold move. And this has been such a thrilling race today, Dave. We thought it might be a far more tactical affair. Teams that we didn't expect to score quite as much have done so, but Osborne, is the bunch behind who are bearing down on him. He's got a 5-second gap, but they've got him on this flat section heading towards the fishing village. They've got him in their sights, but look at the pain writ large on the face of the Canadian. This is do or die stuff.
Yeah, this really speaks to Finesse Esports as well. This team has a lot of depth and tremendous morale. The team of Timmy Bauer, Hayden Warner, who's been very active out here today. And we still haven't talked about Shell Power, the Belgian rider on this squad that could factor in the finale. Let's see if Finesse can find the top 5 on the day out here. Matt Osborne is certainly playing his role out here. And look at this gap. It's continuing to grow. Okay, as we hit 4K, I realize that still we're in long shot range here, but you gotta love the heart that we are seeing here. So Finesse and Draft, they've been the two teams today that have punched above their weight. That's noteworthy as we're ready to start bringing this one home. The horses can smell the barn back in the peloton. The sprinters are going to start looking at positioning. And this is where, Matt, this is the OSS situation. Only the strong will survive this finale today.
Well, Dave, it is. He's got 9.7 seconds. That's the biggest lead of the night so far. Matt Osborne of Canada leading, driving as hard as he can, sticking out nearly 7 watts a kilo. Still a long way to go. 3.5 watts a kilo. We drop down into the ocean tubes for about 2Ks. Then we emerge back into the sunshine before we swing right into Watopia. But the gap is still holding steady. It's 12 seconds. Dave, this is an astonishing ride. What is happening behind? It seems as if there's almost like a bit of a standoff behind. Nobody, Dave, is willing to take it up. Could Matt Osborne be doing something super special here? 12 seconds is the gap.
This will go down as the greatest individual ride in the ZRL if he can hold on. All right, folks, buckle up, Buttercups. This is going to be unbelievable. Matt, they were fanned out across the road. They're playing with fire. The gap has now gone up to 14 seconds. If he brings this with 14 seconds down to 2K, we have a very, very interesting conversation. Then it's going to come down to how badly can the Canadian hurt himself here. This is an exceptional individual ride. They say that fortune favors the brave. Well, that's Matt right now. 14 seconds, and there's not an organized chase right now, Matt. They are playing with fire here. They're about to watch a grass fire turn into a structure fire.
Well, he's just stolen another second. The gap is now up to 15 seconds as he still holds on to his holding on at 170 BPM. But is the chase starting to begin now? Dan Fleeman has now moved on to the front for Saris and the Pros Closet in an effort to try and bring this gap down. We haven't seen a gap this big for a long time. Another second now. 16 seconds for the Canadian, who is flying down underneath through the ocean tubes. He's got 2.2 Ks to go. That's around under 3 minutes of effort, but can he sustain it? But 16 seconds is the gap now. This is an astonishing performance by the Canadian, and it's Thomas Thrall who picks up the chase behind.
When this move started, it had a 1 in a million chance. About a minute ago, it went to 50-50. In my mind, this is absolutely unbelievable. This is why we race bikes, ladies and gentlemen. This is what it is all about. A solo move. It's still at 16 seconds. They have not, there they go. All right, they have lit the fuse. The chase is now coming full gas. Joe Reese, the Welsh rider, has hit the front at 12 watts per kilo. This right here, right now on the ZRL is what we have been waiting for. Can he hold on? He's down to 1.5K to go. No one on planet Earth is suffering, digging deeper than Matt Osborne, the Canadian out of Vancouver, British Columbia, riding his brains out right now. This is what we've been waiting for, Matt.
Well, downtown Watopia beckons. He's back out into the sunshine. He knows what he's got to do. He's still got a decent gap on the riders, but his gap is coming down. But it is Joe Rees, as you said, the Welshman who is chasing in the gap. But the gap is now coming down to the peloton behind. 14 seconds, 15 seconds. Rees is still double digits behind.
It might be too late.
This is an amazing performance. He's only got 1 kilometre to go. I think he's going to pull something absolutely spectacular off here, Dave.
All right, folks. Right now, Matt Oostborn is holding on to a 9-second advantage on one solo rider, Joe Rees out of Wales. Then it's one of the top sprinters, the Belgian Gianni Koosman, who's sitting on the front of the chase. So it's all hands on deck as far as this chase. He's down to 675 meters. He's going to make it. He is going to do it, Matt. I now believe, and you've got to think, that this is the greatest ride that we have seen in the history of the ZRL. He's down to 1/2 K to go. This is within striking distance. Matt Oostborn, you are my hero.
This is an astonishing performance by the Canadian from Finesse Esports. Osborne is just going to have the finishing straight. Is going to come in. Is in sight now. 7 seconds is the gap. It's going to be enough, but there's a big. Jones is closing. Ollie Jones from Canyon Esports bearing down on the Canadian. The finish line is in sight. It looks like Jones overtakes. Heartbreak for the Canadian, and Jones takes the win. Absolutely sensational racing here on round 2. All the results, of course, are provisional, but that was something sensational. You have witnessed one of the most exciting races ever on the Zwift platform. That was round 2 of season 3. That, Dave Towell, was special.
He held on for a top 10 spot in 9th place for Matt Oostborn. But Matt, you won a lot of fans today. That is how you Canuck up Ollie Jones for the win. So the New Zealander gets that one. Vidar Mel steps up for 2nd place. Anders Fuldogger, the Danish rider, in 3rd. Lionel Viassen for 4th. Michael Volz, a previous winner in the ZRL, the Dutchman, for 5th. You can see Austrian Stefan Kirkmeyer in 6th. Nicholas Pedersen, another Dutch rider, in 7th. Thomas Thrall in 8th, as he's the Canadian just in front of Matt Oostborn, one of the heroes of the day. And then Ryan Larson rounding out our top 10. How do you like them apples? Wow.
Well, Dave, I mean, that was an astonishing effort. I mean, we had one of the most aggressive races I think we've seen in men's racing for a long, long time. A lot of individual riders willing to take, well, the bull by the horns. But Matt Osborne, it looked as if it was going to be plain sailing to the line, but it wasn't. Ollie Jones timed his sprint to perfection. And also, look at that. The ever experienced Weirstand there in 4th. It's going to be interesting. The points total it on the night. So this is Ollie Jones in his pain cave. He's gone very, very deep indeed. I mean, this sport of ours is such a beautiful sport, Dave, but it can be so cruel, but so spectacularly exciting at the same time. But it's all about timing your effort. And this man, Ollie Jones, well, he did that to perfection. I mean, who would have thought with 500 meters to go, this man would emerge the winner, but he has.
Yeah, he turned himself into a wattage cottage. There's no doubt when you talk about Ollie. Matt, do we call that a sprint finish? Because that was without a doubt the most fantastic finish that I've seen. Ultimately, it was won in a sprint, but that was a catch of a solo break with a sprint right behind it, literally a millionth of a second behind it. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we've been hoping you would enjoy on ZRL. Today's, I still have goosebumps. I guess you call it chicken skin, whatever it is. I'm affected by that race, no doubt. And I see a lot of folks online chiming in as well. To all the racers out there, Matt and Hannah, I know you both share this sentiment. Thank you for the show. We are entertained.
That was a wonderful race. I think a lot of teams held back a little bit in terms of just keeping, it's a bit of a cliche, but they certainly, well, Canyon Esports in particular, certainly kept their powder dry. They were almost noticeable by their absence early stages of the race, but certainly licked things up at the end. Let's have a little look at the action replay, Dave, because I think this is going to be replayed on many, many occasions. Heartbreak for Osborne, but joy for Ollie Jones of Canyon Esports. This was the moment. He had acres of tarmac, didn't he? He almost had a whole straight on these gentle curves heading into downtown Watopia. It looks as if we were set fair for, well, the kind of moment, the moment for Finesse Esports. And still at this point, Dave, it looks like it's home and dry. But just talk us through the last few hundred meters, because something spectacular happened right about now.
Yeah, he's dying 1,000 deaths inside. It's, as you said, it's bike racing at its best. This is Ollie just finding another level, just a motivated finale. He makes the catch and then just drives this nail home. He makes that catch at 65 meters to go. And if the race was another 10 meters long, so that's the smallest window that you could find. He makes the catch, Matt, at 50 meters to go, and he gets caught by the sprint 5 meters after the line. That is unbelievable to watch.
Yep, absolutely. Well, amazing. You can just see Jones. It looks as if, well, he had it clear by a couple of lengths, and then poor old Osborne managed to hold on, as you said, Dave, for the top 10. I think it was 9th he got in the end, but swamped on the line. I mean, that was a spectacular finale. And I think, well, this racing just gets better and better. Season 3, I think we're set fair up for something spectacular. There we go. The team points on the night. Look at that. Well,
Incredible.
1 point in it. Canyon Esports take victory on the night by 1 solitary point ahead of a resurgent PO Auto Ceramic Speed there, 83 points. Movistar E-Team, they're going to be exceptionally happy with that performance today, 3rd with 65. Then we have Finesse. Well, they kind of almost like deserved the win with that performance by Osborne. 4th place, solid as ever by Kirkmare E Racing Team. They are really emerging and turning into a force to be reckoned with. Then we have Insured, powered by Pedal Power, Callas Esports, BZR Sports Solid. They'll be very happy with that, as will Beast Mode in 9th. 2 of those teams, of course, newly promoted. Dutch Racing rounding out the top 10. Let's have a little look at what page 2 offers up. So there we go. Saris and the Pros Closet there with 31. Restart Racing with 28. Then we have BRT Mountain Fuel, Team Swedish Swifters, Swift Warriors, Next Esport, World of Elite Swifters, and then 18th place with 6 points Draft. After, let's be fair, they sent 2 riders up the road and really helped animate what was a spectacular race. I mean, well, breathless stuff. There's so much to kind of pick out. I mean, so much intrigue. And in terms of teams kind of going down to the wire there. And when you look at the first half of that race, Dave, Canyon Esports had it all to do, but clearly they had a plan and they executed it to perfection. But 1 point, I mean, that is something pretty special, isn't it?
What's your plan? Well, it's Ollie Jones. It's that simple. It's Ollie Jones ends up winning 2/3 of the team's total points with that final sprint. PO Auto, along the way, collected half of their points in bonuses. So very, very interesting and different ways to get to the finish line. Canyon cracks the code, again, by 1 point. And PO Auto raced an entirely different kind of race today than Canyon did. So it shows you the directors, the thought process behind these teams makes a big difference. But there's different ways to get to the line. And today it was Ollie Jones and his Canyon squad. And that's not a big surprise. If you hadn't watched any of the race, you'd look at these results and go, it's about what I'd expect, right? Well, how we got here was thrilling. And again, the racers made the day.
I'm just wondering, I think we had Naomi, our producer, just saying, I'm wondering if Ollie is actually texting Matt there. I very much doubt it, but I think it maybe a little bit of congratulations. So Ollie Jones there, again, a big smile from the man there in his pain cave. Again, a rider that we know, well, he's immensely powerful, so experienced on the Zwift platform. But what can you say about Matt Osborne? Well, he's won, I tell you what, Dave, he's won a lot of plaudits, won a lot of friends, and amongst other Zwifters, racers and the community alike, he'll be much admired, really sticking his neck out, taking a risk. It didn't quite come off, but as we said before, that is what bike racing is all about. Sticking your neck out, taking a gamble, and trying your hand. I mean, and at the end of the day, it made for absolutely spectacular viewing. And that is what this is all about. The Zwift Racing League is about entertaining as much as anything else, isn't it, Dave?
100%. And I'd have to say that the women's race absolutely lived up to that same standard as well. It's really interesting when you look at, I saw some folks online saying that this course would be maybe not the most thrilling day of racing. And it turned out to be the exact opposite. I think that, as you said at the top of the show, Richmond, the after party Richmond race at the end of season 2, and today will stand out to me as the best 2 races that we've had so far. But we're writing history every single time we race out here on the ZRL. But today, gold star day.
definitely was a gold star. Yeah, awards to everybody. Ollie Jones in particular, but that was absolutely spectacular. Let's have Hannah back in the mix. Let's bring Hannah back on before we say our goodbye. So, I mean, Hannah, breathless women's racing, breathless men's racing too. We could sit, I think, for the next half an hour and talk about both races. But what are your primary takeaways from what's been a spectacular evening here in Watopia?
We certainly could. What a start to season 3. 2 races, 2 very different races, and one in very different styles. I mean, wow! If this is what we're in for the remainder of the season, incredible stuff. Feel for Matt Usbon there. You can only feel his pain just to be caught so close to the finish line there in the men's race. But congratulations to Ollie Jones. Tremendous stuff. And again, of course, results provisional. 3rd place overall for Movistar E-Team. Not a bad night for both their female and male squads.
Indeed, and both promoted teams in the men's actually finished in the top 10 as well, just showing, I think, Dave, I mean, the racing was spectacular, but the teams that have been promoted into the Premier Division, also Wildcard, Movistar, the newly promoted teams in both men's and women's, they're really making a mark, and I think it's not going to be easy for the established teams to kind of run away with this. I think what we've set up for is a really, really interesting battle over the next 6 weeks.
Something we've been hoping for is that parity where you don't just have 2 or 3 really good teams and then a bunch of teams that are struggling. At this point, we've really found the sweet spot here where on any given race, there's 10 different teams that have a decent shot of winning. This is where we really want it to be. I'm really excited about the rest of season 3. I'm with you, Hannah. If this is going to be the first couple of chapters of this book, I'm reading the whole thing.
Definitely. This is going to be an airport page turner. Do not put this book down. Do not miss another week of the ZRL. Of course, right now and continuing through is the Zwift Community Racing. Of course, that's headed up by Nathan Guerra's team. So make sure you take a look at what's going on in the Zwift Community Leagues, because you could be looking at some of the stars of Zwift racing of the future. We'll be back same time next week on Tuesday, but this time we're heading to the Big Apple to take a bite out of the KOM after party. And if you want to take a look at all of the results in a bit more detail, head over, there it is, zwift.com/Zwift Racing League. And of course, why not hop on a tour of Watopia as well, because I've done pretty much all of those. Make sure you hop on, have a bit of a ride, familiarize yourself with what's going on in Watopia, and don't miss as well Ogier Borg with the World of Zwift. It's absolutely jam-packed, but make sure you do join us for next week. I'm mincing up my words because I'm so excited about what happened tonight. But from me, from Hannah Walker, and of course from Dave Towle, see you same time next week. Stay safe, ride on, see you soon.